Chapter 581, A Fantasized Client. By now, many players had heard that Mage City's auction house was not safe during these past 2 days. There was that heated bidding war yesterday, followed by 2 robbers scoping out the joint after, and then there were rumors of 2 beautiful ladies appearing later that night who wanted to commit robbery. Plenty of these players, who were regretting having missed out on such a good show the other day, were surprised to find something else interesting appearing early the next morning. A performance artist had suddenly shown up in the auction house. There was no world chat channel and parallel world for players to conduct business, so trading was a little inconvenient. However, this was precisely the reason why the offline trade forums became especially lively as a result, and items that players from all the cities were either selling or searching for appeared there. The various trading forum boards were separated by the cities, but all the forum boards for each city were equally bustling. The appearance of a piece of top-grade equipment like vast lushness utopian magic staff in the auction house had been rather shocking, and it was often such item that would be promoted across parallel world on the trading forum. Ultimately, just as the utopian magic staff was sold through the auction house, almost immediately, another player appeared in the same place with a raised placard to indicate his wish to purchase it. This extremely contrarian and novel idea instantly drew the attention of the masses. "Bro, aren't you tired of doing all this?" Someone had even come to interview the man. "It's fine." Patty St. Pastures did not wish to divert his attention, keeping his eyes on the distribution NPC even as he casually replied. It was obvious to the crowd where he was looking, and no one suspected him of scoping out a potential mark for robber this time. The people laughed. "Bro, you're really conscientious. Are you thinking of buying the utopian magic staff right off the hands of the winning bidder?" Patty St. Pastures nodded. "Speaking of which, I heard that the guy who managed to make the winning bid had yet to retrieve the magic staff even after the auction ended yesterday." Another person quipped. "Even now? Who knows?" As the players continued their discussion, many proceeded to flash a thumbs up to Patty St. Pastures, who could only return the favor with a wry smile. When all was said and done, Southern Lone Blade's plan was extremely successful. While it drew everybody's attention to Patty St. Pastures, it let him establish a strong first impression to the crowd, never suspecting that this priest had other motives beyond what he had said. In comparison, the others were all having a much easier time. There were no abnormalities over by the bounty assignment hall or the various spawn points. Southern Lone Blade thought for a long time if such a situation explained anything. Unexpectedly, sweeping a glance over at his friends list, he finally realized something when he saw the swathes of dimmed names. Most players had not gotten up yet. He then tried adding Svelte Dancer as a friend, and sure enough, the lady was not online yet. Southern Lone Blade replied to her mail. Acknowledging her request in all seriousness, he informed her of their service fee, which was double that of their first client, of how long they would need to accomplish this assignment, and of the deposit issue. Southern Lone Blade felt that it was important to put on a good show in its totality. Since they were pretending to fall for the bait, it was only natural that they had to show their true colors. It would be too illogical if they did not make their demand for coins known. After adding Svelte Dancer and discovering that she was not online, Southern Lone Blade gave adding Thousand Miles Drunk, Eternal Dominion, and other known names a shot, but not one of them was online. This was around the time when players would usually be online, but precisely because of that, there was a possibility that the yet-to-be-revealed buyer of the utopian magic staff would use this chance to make an appearance. Southern Lone Blade had also been pondering on just why this buyer had not shown himself yet. Trying to think in the other person's shoes as to the reason, he wondered if the person was worried about being targeted for larceny and thus was being so careful. If that was truly the case, it would make sense for the person to choose such a time when there were few players around. With that thought in mind, Southern Lone Blade reminded Patty St. Pastures to pay attention. On his end, Patty St. Pastures had quite a headache from being observed with such scrutiny. He felt that a majority of players, who had gone here at the auction house this early in the morning, did not seem to be making purchases. Instead, they seemed to be here just to see him. He decided to maintain the status quo, keeping the placards raised high to whomever was spectating and not budging an inch from his spot whatever was happening around him. When noon came, Southern Lone Blade received a system prompt for a new mail. The man quickly made his way to the mailbox and first checked to see who the sender was. Sure enough, it was Felt Dancer. He could not wait to see what the contents of this letter was, and all he got in the face of the meticulous letter he wrote was just one word: okay. Furthermore, the 1,500 gold coin deposit Southern Lone Blade had requested was enclosed in it. What a wonderful client! He could not help but sigh ruefully once more. Not haggling or intentionally making things difficult, she did not even nitpick on any detail. A single word of okay along with the deposit, it was simply straightforward. For a moment, Southern Lone Blade wished that this was not a trap. How he wished that they were indeed helping Svelte Dancer with a job request. Southern Lone Blade mimicked her demeanor and responded with one word of okay. He somewhat despondently waited for her to reply again. Even though he knew that it was impossible, he still fantasized a wondrous scenario of the lady burying the hatchet between them and becoming their top client. Sighing, Southern Lone Blade suddenly received a message from Glue. Big South, Silver Moon came asking about the magic staff. Tell him to get fucked. Southern Lone Blade was not in the mood for him. Why were his fantasies always so splendid, yet his reality was completely rubbish? Glue could tell that Southern Lone Blade was probably in a momentary spell of bad mood, so he waited for a moment before asking again, do I really say that? Tell him we'll naturally get in contact with him when we manage to loot it. It's not past the agreed upon date yet, what's the point of badgering about it every day? Southern Lone Blade remarked, annoyed. Okay. Patty Scent Pasture's message came in soon after his conversation with Glue ended. Big South, this ain't gonna work. Doesn't this mean I have to keep holding this placard here for 7 days straight if the buyer only shows up on the final day? Southern Lone Blade would, of course, not treat his comrades so cruelly, so he quickly explained, of course. You don't need to do that for all 7 days. What you're doing now is just to pave way for the rest in group not to be suspected of larceny. This way, even if they come and go there, it'll just be seen as them helping out a friend purchase the magic staff. Their suspicions will all but evaporate. Yes? If we have to spend up to 7 days here, won't we really be incurring a loss for this assignment? Patty Scent Pastures asked. We don't really have a choice. No one has an idea on just what will happen before our work begins. We can only blame it on bad luck that this situation has gotten so messed up. Now that we've finally gotten the chance to turn the tables on our enemies, the real loss here will be if we end up paying that scumbag Silvermoon twice his deposit. Southern Lone Blade replied. I don't think that there's any need for that. I'll stay here with the placard, and you guys should drop what you're all doing. Instead, spend the time to grind your levels, do whatever all of you guys must do. Nobody should be squandering their time here. Isn't Thousand Miles drunk and his bunch looking to mess around? I'll just take on this task myself of finding out where the magic staff ends up, and then we'll gather and proceed with this assignment. What do you think? Patty Scent Pastures asked. Southern Lone Blade thought of what he had said and felt that it made sense. So he nodded his head and relayed this information to the others. Besides Patty Scent Pastures, everyone else would head out to grind. They would suffer too much of a loss if all of them were to camp out everywhere and not do any grinding. When Svelte Dancer got online, she received Southern Lone Blade's reply. Noting the price stated, the time required, and the deposit he expected at a single glance. Actually, there was no way Svelte Dancer could say that she had not come into contact with such people before. She might be rich, but her money was not an indication of her luck. Not a single item, equipment, or skill scroll she had on her was as a result of her luck, and everything had been bought. Meanwhile, Svelte Dancer naturally could not be bothered with which of these sellers were honest folks, despicable swindlers, or larcenists like Southern Lone Blade's team. Even now, some items she had on her might perhaps had been plundered from others. Having come across a similar business deal before, she of course did not find Southern Lone Blade's request to be strange and just swiftly paid the required deposit before she happily brought the letter to Vastlushness. See, I told you it'll be easy. Svelte Dancer handed the letter over for Vastlushness to take a look. Vastlushness scanned through the letter thrice, taking in this clear depiction of Southern Lone Blade's true colors. Naturally, nothing was amiss, but with how Southern Lone Blade had so readily agreed to their request, she could not help but begin to have doubts. "You've already paid the deposit?" Vastlushna's eyes were fixed on the 1,500 gold coins deposit written on the letter as she asked this. Southern Lone Blade mentioned that if they were interested in doubling the price, this assignment would cost them 8,000 gold coins, which was why it needed a 1,500 gold coin deposit. "Aren't you afraid of this guy merely trying to cheat you out of your money?" Vastlushnas felt that Sveltdancer's wariness of others was just too "No way." "Guess what I saw when I went over at the auction house after I received this letter? One of their priests is there with a looking to purchase the Utopian magic staff sign raised, waiting for the magic staff to appear. I only sent him the money after I saw what they are doing," Sveltdancer explained. Could it really be that simple? Vastlushnas felt that this matter had progressed far too simply and smoothly. "Oh, yeah, we got to go inform those guys not to mess things up, since that group of robbers are now helping us obtain the magic staff." Sveltdancer did not put much thought into this matter and really did give Southern Lone Blade's team an out, just as the man had expected, by running to look for young Master Han. Young Master Han swept through the letter Southern Lone Blade had sent and tossed it aside, letting Brother Assist, who was sitting beside him, quickly pore over the document in detail. "So if the double cost for this assignment is 8,000 gold coins, that makes the original price to be about 4,000 gold coins. The market price for the Utopian magic staff should be about 2,000 gold coins, which means that the cost of their manpower is 2,000 gold coins. For 7 players, each barely gets about 300 gold coins, yet the mandated duration for this assignment is stipulated for 10 to 15 days. It looks like their fees are unrelated to the duration of the assignment in question." With this example, everybody gave him the side eye as Brother Assist's voice slowly trailed off. Finally, he grabbed his little booklet and quietly found a corner to record it. "What's the meaning of this?" Young Master Han went straight to business. "Yours truly has paid twice the price to get those guys to loot the magic staff for us, so you guys had better not mess things up," Sveltdancer warned. Normally, the pompousness that came with wealth would be a very detestable thing, so it was unknown how Sveltdancer did it, but she made everyone feel that this was all reasonable and natural. It seemed that reputation was truly a frightening thing. Everyone had already subconsciously accepted Sveltdancer's temperament to be a national thing. Instead, everyone would find it entirely uneasy if she behaved in a different way. "We look forward to not caring about this troublesome matter," young Master Han said. "Besides, you're the one who hired the hitman, Eternal Dominion, so he'll of course listen to what you ask him. However, it will be very interesting if Miles ends up killing Southern Lone Blade. I wonder if he'll listen to your arrangements." "He dares!" Sveltdancer shouted. "Of course, he dares." Young Master Han laughed. Chapter 582, This Again. Sveltdancer was feeling pretty dejected, for truly she had no idea on how to deal with Gufei. On second thought, Gufei might be indomitable, but he was never unreasonable. While that man loved fighting, he wholly understood what the priority was each time, and Vastlushness's wish to get back her Utopian magic staff would take precedence, of course. If he had not understood this, he would not have leapt out so grandly back at the auction house at that time. After all, the man should be clear that revealing his presence to Southern Lone Blade's team then would do more harm than good. Thinking of this, Sveltdancer felt that Gufei should not be an obstacle, but who would have thought that when he got online later that night, he actually shook his head vigorously once he was told of the plan. "How could you do this?" Gufei asked. "Southern Lone Blade's team will be attempting to rob someone else for the magic staff. Never mind that you don't want us to stop him. Isn't it a little outrageous for you to make us stand by and watch it happen, only to swoop in and reap the spoils after the mess?" "Yeah, how could you do this?" Eternal Dominion parroted. Sveltdancer was tongue-tied. She had not expected such a reaction from the two men. Even though this was not something many people would do just because they coveted another's equipment, most would not mind resorting to such drastic measures at critical moments, yet Gufei consciously objected to it just because of that reason. Looking around at the others beside her, especially young Master Han's knowing look, he made it apparent that he had mentioned this to her beforehand precisely because of this and not because of Gufei's love for fighting. At the moment, he was watching this leisurely, waiting to see just how she would deal with this. Svelte Dancer was momentarily speechless, especially when she recalled what Gu Fei had once mentioned about the strict code of morality that kung fu practitioners like him adhere to. It was evident that the man was not about to back down from his view. So, what do we do? She did actually not try persuading the man or even got angry about it. Instead, she scratched her head and asked this question, which shocked the whole circle of them greatly. This was definitely a behavior that went against her character. Since you have the money to hire Southern Lone Blade for this job, why not just buy the magic staff directly and settle this matter then and there? Gu Fei asked. I'm willing to buy it, but that will require the other party being willing to sell it first. Svelte Dancer answered. So you simply plan to snatch it from the person if they don't wish to sell it? Gu Fei asked. Svelte Dancer was at the end of her rope, so she nudged Vast Lushness over. You go. That's the way things go in MMOs, if someone isn't targeting you for drops, then you're targeting someone else. Vast Lushness had no mental barriers over this. No one from Y City had that sort of compunction. There's also sequential order to that. If someone doesn't target me for drops, then I won't target others, Gu Fei countered. Vast Lushness retreated. It was now Royal God Call's turn to leap out. Miles, you're really too much. A babe's request and you still, Gu Fei swept a glance over to the twerp and the latter obediently shut his mouth and stepped away. Seeing that Royal God Call was cowed to swallowing the bitter pill, it went without saying that War Without Wounds would not step forth and put himself in the line of fire. Svelte Dancer turned her gaze on the others gathered who had yet to speak up, hoping that one of them would have the eloquence to persuade Gu Fei. In the end, Brother Assist merely clutched his little booklet and calmly acted as if he had heard nothing, while Sword Demon nodded and coughed once before saying, Miles right. Fuck. Svelte Dancer was at her wit's end, looking over at Vast Lushness. The latter sighed in utter disappointment. Let's just forget about the whole business with the staff, then. I've already spent 1,500 of my gold coins. Svelte Dancer was indignant. Then, treat that as a lesson. Gu Fei was still lecturing the woman. Svelte Dancer could not beat the man, nor could she reason with him, so all she could do was stare daggers at him. So, what do you say we do now? Svelte Dancer asked. What else can we do? Find the man and kill him. Gu Fei replied. But if we don't use this method, how are we gonna lure him out in the open? Svelte Dancer had footed such a large sum of gold not just to help Vast Lushness retrieve her magic staff, but also to achieve her goal of avenging herself and eliminate Southern Lone Blade. Whether you pay them or not, they are still gonna steal that magic staff, so we'll just keep watch. Gu Fei replied. Then, you go do it. Svelte Dancer dismissively called out. Okay, I'm off. And just like that, Gu Fei walked off. Eternal Dominion did not follow him this time, at least able to discern who his employer was. He looked at Svelte Dancer and asked, then, where do you want me now? Go, go, go. Go and stake them out together. Svelte Dancer impatiently sent Eternal Dominion on his way as well. With the two men gone, her foul expression evaporated as she giggled darkly. Everyone was baffled, wondering if this lady had been angered to the point that she had lost her senses. In the end, they saw Svelte Dancer put her arms around Vast Lushness' shoulders and say, let them go. He's gonna log off in 2 or 3 hours, anyway, we can do whatever we want once they are gone. The whole lot of them exchanged glances. This was indeed Gu Fei's Achilles heel. The man only spent 3 hours a day online, so how could it be so coincidental that something would happen during these 3 hours? There was no guarantee that the buyer of the magic staff would show up at that time period. Over at the auction house, it was already time for Southern Lone Blade himself to hold the placard he had made. After Patty Scent Pastures started doing this in the first few hours, the rest of them took turns doing it for 2 to 3 hours each. In a case of blessing in disguise, Glue and Flame Cinched Clothes managed to dodge this menial work as a result of having been exposed as robbers the night before. Southern Lone Blade was worried that the two would be recognized, which would spoil their whole plan. Meanwhile, one of the required steps when changing shift was to help the relief, who was wearing another Windchaser's emblem, complete the bounty mission he had picked up. This would give them the chance to check the bounty assignment hall for any ambush while they took a quick peek at the spawn point when they went past them. Southern Lone Blade became more and more at ease when he saw that there was nothing out of the ordinary. To think that the enemies would underestimate his professionalism and that he would turn one's coat for money. Still, it worked perfectly. Were it not for this underestimation, how would he have the chance to loot the magic staff peacefully after it got retrieved? Southern Lone Blade was still having this beautiful fantasy when someone came up right beside him without him realizing it. He turned his head to look at this newcomer, and his cold sweat ran free despite knowing that he was in a safe zone. Unbeknown to him, Gufei had already appeared right beside him. With a quick glance at that placard the larcenist had in his hand, Gufei spoke, "You've got plenty of tricks up your sleeves, huh?" Both parties had clashed for so long, yet this seemed to be the first time they had spoken to each other in such proximity. Southern Lone Blade's mind spun as he tried to figure out this one question: just why is this guy here? Ultimately, Gufei gave him his answer promptly by hollering to the queuing players before them, "Everybody, please be careful. This man is Southern Lone Blade, someone who specializes in larceny in this game. Right now, he is after the buyer of the Utopian magic staff. Please take extra care." Fuck. Southern Lone Blade was astounded. While he could not fathom what Gufei's intentions were when the latter approached him, he thought that, since he knew Svelte Dancer, there was a possibility of him being here to throw out a spiteful word or two to scare him a little. Never would he have thought that Gufei would actually verbally expose their plan just like that. Just how in the world did Svelte Dancer tell this man? Gufei's words naturally caused quite a stir in the auction house. It had only been a day since that last incident with robbers scoping out the place had happened, thus, the word had spread further as a result. It was fine if Gufei did not shout it out like that. As before, when the players passing by merely darted their eyes over, all of them merely treated the placard Southern Lone Blade's gang was holding aloft as a joke. Yet at Gufei's reminder, everyone began contemplating over this more deeply. Not using the simple method of the trade forums to declare their intention to purchase the Utopian magic staff was already dubious enough as it was. It was just that everyone present happened to know that the magic staff got sold in this place 2 days prior and that the buyer had yet to retrieve it, which was why it did not raise any alarm on anyone until now that people were employing such a passive method of keeping watch of the equipment retrieval in this auction house. However, after hearing Gufei's word, the crowd immediately came to their senses. So, these people aren't looking to purchase the magic staff but are looking to see who the buyer is instead to target them for looting. What happened next was like a reenactment of what had happened the other day with glue and flame-singed clothes. The crowd, who had gotten all riled up, surrounded Southern Lone Blade, reprimanding the warrior with relish. Southern Lone Blade lived up to his title of being the boss, though, for he was far more composed than Glue and Flame-Singed Clothes had been. To him, it did not matter just how many players were around him, as none of them could touch or even spit at him. Anyway, all Southern Lone Blade did was stash away that placard he had been holding and send calmly a message to his comrades: head over to the bounty assignment hall and scout the area, please be extra cautious. Something happened again? His men hurriedly asked. Yeah, 1,000 Miles Drunk suddenly came over and exposed our identities. I honestly can't make sense just what they are trying to achieve, wanting us to retrieve the magic staff yet making a mess of things here for us, Southern Lone Blade said. The rest were silent for quite a good while before Glue messaged, Big South, why don't we just admit our loss here? Let's just give up on this assignment. Does everyone have the same idea? Southern Lone Blade knew that they were all together, and this answer here could very well be the product of a discussion everyone had before getting Glue to be the message bearer. Yes, Glue affirmed. Valp, wait till I escape before we talk about this further. Southern Lone Blade had already gotten the bounty he needed to activate the emblem's teleportation, but he was not about to use it until he was certain that the location was safe. The crowd was chaotic, and Southern Lone Blade could not see where Gufei had gone off to, so all he could do was bear his resentment in secret. Glue and the others gingerly made their way to the bounty assignment hall, not courageous enough to get too close. They circled around the building from various angles, observing everything, before they finally confirmed that there was no one there. Still, They were only certain that no one was laying an ambush outside. It was entirely possible for there to be players lying in wait inside the bounty assignment hall. They would die the moment they entered the building if the latter scenario was true, so these men looked at each other, unsure what was the right thing to do. They saw a noob bounding happily as he passed through nonchalantly. Paddy Scent Pastures hatched a plan when his eyes shifted over. Calling over the noob, he handed over a few gold coins and requested for him to head inside to take a look. He even promised to give the player a piece of equipment after completing this task. The noob happily went forth. Exiting from the bounty assignment hall not too long after, he described all the players he had seen inside, as well as their job class. There was only one player inside the building now, and he was a fighter. Eternal Dominion. Gloon Flame Singed Clothes immediately cried out. That man stomped them to death yesterday. So, there's an ambush, after all. Everyone sighed. Thank you for your help. We have no need for your services any longer. Paddy Scent Pastures casually handed the noob a random piece of equipment and dismissed him before they quickly relayed everything to Southern Lone Blade. In that case, I'll just spend some time here. I had to be here with the placard, anyway, Southern Lone Blade said. His men were aggrieved. Southern Lone Blade might have said all that in a casual tone, but he must be bearing 1,000 fury right now. Gloon Flame Singed Clothes had experienced this themselves, and uncomfortable would be an understatement. However, the problem was that the player they had camped out here, Eternal Dominion, was not just any average gamer. They were no match for him even if the 6 of them ganged up against him. Perhaps, we could lure him away? Gloon Blackwater, who had job classes with good movement speed, suggested. That's one way to do it. No matter how powerful he is, there's no way he can be in 2 places at once, and neither can he outrun either of you. That shouldn't be a problem. The others expressed their approval to this idea. Chapter 583, You Are Not Even on My Radar. Eternal Dominion's movement speed isn't too fast, not like 1,000 miles drunks. As the 6 men discussed this, they grew more and more convinced that this was a brilliant idea. Then, I'll go. Blackwater volunteered. Glue had quite a hard time yesterday, so no one was heartless enough to let him take sequential blows at this point. We'll keep watch over here and assist you in ganging up on him if you can't hold on. I don't believe that's not enough. Paddy Scent Pastures said. It's not a matter of belief. It's not like we haven't tried it before. Don't be reckless. The knight unrivaled Lucky Star spoke. Eternal Dominion had beaten everyone down to the ground in that fight in Zyot the city last time. The fact was that Eternal Dominion had already shown restraint back then by only sending Southern Lone Blade to the spawn point. Moreover, Southern Lone Blade was the strongest among them. Blackwater left under the encouragement of his comrades. He looked calm and collected on the surface, but his heart was a bundle of nerves. He felt as if he were about to die from anxiety. Even though Eternal Dominion did not have fast movement speed, the skill he had demonstrated on them was demonic. Blackwater was worried that the guy would just snap his neck directly before he could even find an opportunity to disengage. In the end, he could only console himself with the ultimate indoctrination phrase, if death comes, so be it. It was only losing a level, anyway. Walking up to the door, Blackwater took a deep breath and pushed it open abruptly. The first thing he saw was Eternal Dominion standing right in front of it. Without a word, Blackwater shut the door, turned around, and ran. The direction and route had all been chosen beforehand. Blackwater did not even bother looking back as he activated his fleet foot at the risk of death. A message prompt appeared half a minute later, and Blackwater had no time to take note of it. He continued running with reckless abandon, circling over 8 different streets before he gathered what courage he had left and boldly took a look behind him. He let out a sigh of relief when he failed to see Eternal Dominion on his tail. Still, the man did not dare to relax as he made his way to the more crowded area. This was when he started checking the messages that came pinging endlessly while he was making his escape. Where is he? Where's Eternal Dominion? Where did you run off to? Eternal Dominion isn't chasing you, you idiot. What is wrong with you? The series of messages were all from his comrades. Blackwater was in a daze as he quickly picked out a name out of the lot and replied, What happened? Damn, you're still alive? Where did you run off to? Seriously, how could you not have taken a look behind you all this while? Eternal Dominion didn't even step out of the bounty assignment hall. Blackwater was speaking to Patty St. Pastures right now. What's going on? Blackwater was surprised. Did you even let him see you? Patty St. Pastures asked. We just saw you turn and flee the moment you pushed open that door. I saw him. He was standing right there by the entrance. I was facing the man once I pushed open the door. How could he not have seen me? Blackwater asked with certainty. And you're certain he is Eternal Dominion? Patty St. Pastures probed. Absolutely. Strange. Patty St. Pastures did not reply after this. The others listened as the priest told them all what had happened, and they were all equally baffled. Blackwater quickly made his way back to where they all were and saw that the other 5 were still squatting right there. Perhaps, I was too panicky and moved too quickly, so he failed to identify me right away. Blackwater had thought about the entire sequence of events on his way back and felt that this was the only plausible explanation. His state of mind was too tense earlier, and he ran the moment he opened the door and spotted Eternal Dominion. Blackwater might have identified the guy right away, but that was because he had been prepared for it. As for their enemy, Eternal Dominion, everything happened too suddenly that all he had seen was the door opening and all he had registered was the scene of Blackwater sprinting away. Fuck. All of them jeered. Blackwater appeared to be calm and collected when he volunteered for the task, but it turned out that his heart was actually all over the place. I won't do it again this time. Blackwater was also rather ashamed of his performance, showing a look of determination that said he would try his best. Quick, I reckon Big South is about to drown under that sea of saliva, Flame-Singed Clothes said, having experienced the same thing himself. There's no way saliva can make contact with people in a safe zone, right? Blackwater turned to ask the others as he made his way to the door. Everyone lifted their middle fingers to show their contempt. Outside the Bounty Assignment Hall's door, Blackwater took in a deep breath. Having realized that his last attempt was counterproductive, he thought that he should move much slower this time. Thus, slowly, bit by bit, he pushed the door open. Eternal Dominion was standing right before him. Their eyes met. There's no way you didn't see me clearly this time. Blackwater was extremely confident for this attempt, turning around to close the door to flee. Still, having learned his lesson from the last time, he did not run off without ever looking back this time. Alas, before he could even do this, he received a message. Blackwater glanced at it briefly and turned around. Sure enough, nobody was chasing after him. He pulled up the message, and it was the same criticisms from his comrades, each questioning Blackwater just what he was trying to do. Fucking hell. What the fuck? Did that guy fall asleep standing there like that? Blackwater was crushed. As he made his way back, he began to worry that Eternal Dominion had only reacted too slowly and was making a beeline for him right at this moment. As such, he intentionally increased his distance from the Bounty Assignment Hall. Turning his head to where his comrades were hiding, all 5 men expressionlessly looked him straight in the eyes, their middle fingers pointed toward him. I'm certain that he spotted me this time. I guarantee it. Blackwater swore to everyone. Can you make sure that he moves before you make your move? Relax. His movement speed is much slower than yours. There's no way he will be your match when it comes to running. If he's too close to you, I'll make sure to help divert his attention a little, Glue said. Seriously, I really wasn't scared off. I made sure that he saw me clearly last time. Blackwater was dejected. He felt that he was really maligned to the point where he would not be proven innocent even if he were to jump into the Yellow River one. Making his way back to the door again, Blackwater really gritted his teeth and decided to go through with it to the bitter end. With an unrestrained kick, he kicked the door open and glared at Eternal Dominion. Eternal Dominion was still in that standing posture from before. The moment he heard the door being opened so grandly, his eyes darted over and went away. After a quick moment, the man resumed scrolling through the bounty missions upon wanted players list in his boredom. Blackwater was stunned for a good half-minute. The other 5 stared over in their direction and found it to be strange as well. Blackwater was being far too manly here. Not moving for half a minute after opening the door. Just what are the two of them doing? Eternal Dominion remained preoccupied with himself over that half a minute. Blackwater could stand it no longer, so he opened his mouth to ask, "What are you doing?" "Come kill me." Eternal Dominion turned over and proceeded to look all around. They were the only 2 players present in the entire Bounty Assignment Hall. "You talking to me?" Eternal Dominion asked. "No kidding. Blackwater scoffed. Who are you? Eternal Dominion was astonished. Blackwater instantly felt as if the wind in his sails was taken out. Only then did he realize why Eternal Dominion had not chased after him these 2 times. It was not because the man failed to make out who he was, rather, Eternal Dominion did not even know who he was in the first place. Even though both parties had exchanged blows before, they had always gone their separate ways soon after. Everybody would naturally have a deep impression of Eternal Dominion given just how powerful the fighter was. Blackwater's mistake here was to think of himself as someone who played a significant part in all this, enough for the enemy to remember how he looked as a result. Still, he knew now that Eternal Dominion had been treating him as just a random passerby all this while. In this person's eyes, he was akin to that noob their gang had asked to enter the bounty assignment hall to check the situation out. How, then, would this man recognize him after so many days had passed? It was apparent that this was how Eternal Dominion had viewed Blackwater deep down. Monikers, such as the 5 unyielding experts, 10 great adepts, and 7 bottlenecks, were nothing but bubbles to this sort of expert. They would all burst from a poke of a finger. Blackwater went rigid there, and then even as Eternal Dominion remained puzzled, asking once more when he just stood there without reacting. Who are you? I'm someone with Southern Lone Blade, Blackwater answered, worried that Eternal Dominion would follow up with a question like what's a Southern Lone Blade? Thankfully, such a tragedy did not happen. Eternal Dominion exhaled a long O before asking, where's Southern Lone Blade? Why isn't he here yet? Blackwater was slightly comforted that their boss had a place in Eternal Dominion's heart, at least, not to the point where Eternal Dominion would be unable to differentiate him from the masses. You got to get through me first before you meet our boss. Blackwater yelled as he got ready to flee. He would achieve his goal as long as he could lure Eternal Dominion away from here. In the end, Eternal Dominion merely shot him a quick glance and muttered you're mental before continuing to browse the wanted players list. Blackwater was on the verge of a breakdown. He was not in the other person's radar at all. It was just like taking on an enemy up on the battlefield. If he wished to get the enemy commander to chase after him, he at least needed to prove that he was of a certain caliber. This was similar to sending out a measly run-of-the-mill infantry to lure Lubu 2. Who would care to spare a glance at him? Even if he shamelessly sought to engage with the enemy for real, a single clap of his hands was all it took to delete him. There was not even a need to attach any importance to this small fry. Blackwater was in a situation where he could neither lure the enemy away nor dare to go forward and take on Eternal Dominion. He stood there like an idiot, uncertain just how he could face the others backing out like this. Blackwater made his way straight to the 5 when he left. The others had a fright and wondered if the man had gone mad. In the end, they realized that, even though Blackwater had backed out, there was still no one following him behind, which was far too unusual. Blackwater had been inside for quite some time that they believed he had been killed off. There must be something wrong if he could not lure Eternal Dominion out even after this. What's going on? The 5 could hardly wait to ask Blackwater the moment he got near them. Blackwater's face was twisted, as if he had just eaten a bitter melon. He answered with a grimace, he doesn't recognize me. Eh? At first, none of them knew what he meant, but they soon realized what he was getting at after a moment of rumination. And then? Then, I introduced myself. He's only concerned with where Big South is and has absolutely no intention of taking care of me, Blackwater replied, feeling depressed. How can that be? Why did he stomp me dead yesterday, then? Flamesinged Clothes was infuriated. Probably because we bumped into 1,000 miles drunk last night. That man knows who we are and like this one, Glue answered. At least, 1,000 miles drunk's good. Eternal Dominion's far too aloof. Blackwater hit the wall 3. Hey! Everyone darted their eyes over to him. Say that in your mind. They were all suffering in a state of psychological distortion, yet they were still concerned over such things. Let me go, instead. Having exchanged blows the other night, he should be able to recognize me at least, Glue proposed. I doubt that will have an effect. I've already introduced myself, yet he's still adamant on waiting for Big South, Blackwater said. That's pretty stubborn. Everyone derided, even as they felt aggrieved deep down. The man ignoring them even though they had essentially served themselves up. Using Gulong 4 as an analogy, It was as if he did not even acknowledge the presence of a naked lady in front of him, a total disgrace. "Let's go have it out with him," Patty St. Pasture shouted. He might be a priest here in Parallel World, but he was one of the more aggressive out of the seven. "Calm down. Don't make any unnecessary sacrifice. We still have our lives beyond this." The others persuaded the man. While they coaxed him, they made sure to update Southern Lone Blade to their current situation. Surprisingly, Southern Lone Blade did not mind it in the least. "There's no need for you guys to bother with this any longer. Go do your things. I'll just spend my time here. I'd like to see just how long they can camp me out like this. I don't think I'm losing out if just me alone can squander both, or perhaps even more, of their time." Seeing this, everyone could tell that Southern Lone Blade was really reduced to helplessness, since he had opted to behave so shamelessly. All of them knew about how Goofy would not be online for long. Since they were technically no match for him in Parallel World, this was all that was left that they could do to contend with a man. It was essentially a method that was similar to beating up someone in real life just because they could not be beaten online. It was despicable, but Southern Lone Blade was really left with no other options. "Fuck, it's all that scumbag Silver Moon's fault." The 6 men were in a state of mental imbalance at this point. They quickly figured that the root of all this was the assignment Silver Moon had hired them for. "We might even have to pay him back in the worst case scenario." Fuck, fuck, fuck. Everyone was all the more enraged when they thought of this. "Let's teach that twerp a lesson." The 6 men looked at one another, finally finding a target whom they could bully. Chapter 584, Shameless and Delinquent. None of the 6 spoke of this to Southern Lone Blade. While they knew that he bore a deep-seated hatred against Silver Moon as well, they were also aware how much he valued their group's reputation and image in their field. Harming the employer just because they were unable to complete the given assignment, their team would be adversely affected if word got out. However, none of the 6 was able to stomach this any longer, and they badly needed to vent. Randomly finding a passerby to park would not be enough. They needed something fiercer that could really ignite their souls, and no one was more suitable a target than Silver Moon right now. "Let's finish that man off." Blackwater gritted his teeth. Flame-cinched clothes was the one who had received the most damage from all this, yet it was Blackwater who was in the prime position to compete after today. "We need to do it in such a way that it can't be traced back to us," Glue said. "It will be too obvious if all of us go together. That twerp might even see through our intentions." "So, what do we do?" "Let's pick a number of us to go," Glue suggested. I'll go." Each of them raised their hands. Everyone was enthusiastic. "Let's draw lots," Patty St. Pasture suggested. "We'll pick out 4. The remaining 2 will remain on standby." 4 men should be more than enough to take care of Silver Moon. "Didn't you mention that Silver Moon's mingling with quite a few experts right now?" Unrivaled Lucky Star reminded. "Don't worry, Silver Moon won't dare let those guys know of the deal he has with us, so he'll surely come by himself," Glue said. "Are you saying that we'll have to meet the man in person? Wouldn't that be a little too obvious?" Unrivaled Lucky Star asked. "It's inevitable for us to meet him at this point," Glue sighed. The crowd was quiet for quite some time. Finally, someone spoke. "Are you saying that we will announce that we've failed this mission?" "We're all actually already in agreement of this, right?" Glue asked back. The men heaved a heavy sigh. Indeed, that was what everyone had thought when they got online today. It was just that Southern Lone Blade had received a letter from Svelte Dancer, and it somehow got their hopes up that they had a chance to turn the tables on their enemies. Who would have guessed that Goofy would still be making a mess of things by doing the opposite of what Southern Lone Blade had believed would happen and continually harassing them with no end in sight. There was essentially no difference to their situation at all. "But how are we going to tell Big South about this?" All of them naturally had a good understanding of their boss Southern Lone Blade. To put it nicely, the man was someone who would not rest until he achieved his goal. To put it bluntly, the man was the sort who would not shed a tear until he was at death's door. Seeing how he was even willing to be insulted by the crowd at the auction house right now, it was apparent that the man still believed he needed not give up just yet. The handful of them were quiet once more. They were all unwilling to see Southern Lone Blade suffer his current fate for naught, and since he still wished to persevere on, they should also support him to the end as fellow comrades. Actually, We don't need to use our names to stage a meeting with Silver Moon. We can try using the mailbox or a log-off method. Patty St. Pastures proposed. The principle behind the mailbox or a log-off method was one and the same. They would utilize these two activities that every player had to do at fixed locations, and that was the simplest and most effective method to ascertain their target's movement. No matter how indomitable a player was, as long as they could make out who the target was, the two methods aforementioned could be used to find out just where their target would be. It was in the same vein with the auctioning method. While it was obviously harder to meet Silver Moon in such a crowded place like the auction house, this might not be the case for the other two locations, especially if they went with the log-off method. The hit rate for that was 100%. Given Silver Moon's current situation, even if he appears in those two locations, he's sure to keep his face covered. Is everyone confident that they can recognize him even through that? Glue raised a potential problem. This was also why he had not suggested this method from the start. Actually, him keeping his face covered is a distinguishing feature for the man. Since we know his level and job class, given our caliber, I'm sure none of us will have trouble identifying him, Patty St. Pastures said. The rest nodded. They might have lost their levels, but the experience they had accumulated when it came to larceny remained. There was no way that they would lose their ability in spotting their targets no matter how many times they died. They might have problems if their level had dropped so low to the point where they were unable to appraise their target, but it just so happened that Silver Moon was still lower in level to them. Great. Let's position ourselves, then. Glue took out a map of Beishi City. This was not something that this game provided, but as the knowledge of Parallel Worlds players deepened by the day, those who had the particular skill set for this sort of thing started making use of them, and the map of Beishi City that Glue was holding in his hands right now just so happened to have come from a professional cartographer. The grinding maps that's suitable for Silver Moon right now should be the following three locales: Bay Valley, Yinshaw Shore, and Baiwa Forest. Given his current plight, he is sure to avoid the more populous areas, so if we exclude those, the places he should be located are here, here, and here. Glue used his finger to tap each of the spots he mentioned in his speech. Returning to the city to log off from one of these locations, the closest route will take him through the east gate, so he will choose to log off at either the Thieves' Union or Archer Range. Patty St. Pastures crooked his neck and looked at the map. With the present situation in Beishi City, if Silver Moon bumps into anyone, there's no doubt that they'll kick him while he is down, but there's also no one out there searching or springing a trap specifically for him, so all he needs to do is disguise himself properly. There's no need for him to be so vigilant as to take detours or such, so taking the shortest route to the nearest designated log-off point will be the most prudent option for him. Staying online longer than necessary will only put himself at greater risk. After all, Glue said. So, are we setting up an ambush in those two places? Singed, Verdant and I shall head to the Archer Range together as one team. Blackwater, Patty, and Unrivaled will take the Thieves' Union. That should settle it. Everyone should keep their identities hidden as best as they can. Message each other if any news crops up. Let's go. Glue announced. For most of their activities as a professional team of larcenists, there was no need for wisdom. Instead, they depended on their experience to make out a clear plan in a short time, completing the necessary arrangements to spring a trap on Silver Moon. The two three-man teams headed to the two spawn points respectively. They were reassured when they saw that neither of these locations was the first choice for players coming from the auction house or bounty assignment hall to log out. This meant that they were not in danger of bumping into Goofy or Eternal Dominion while they lay in wait at each location. This news really made all of them feel rather encouraged. If we managed to loot his King's Blade. At the end of the day, they were still a gang of robbers. While they were doing this for the sake of venting their pent-up frustrations, they would of course still be considering the potential loot that they could gain from the kill now that they had earnestly begun their work. I guess that'll depend on who has the most luck. Glue laughed. Even though he did not know how long they had to wait, none of them was a stranger to the circumstance that they were in. More importantly, there was absolutely no challenge when it came to killing Silver Moon. It had been a long time since they had experienced having such a relaxed atmosphere that they were able to laugh and hold conversations while on the job. Indeed, The atmosphere had seen an immense improvement. Everybody felt that it was a wise decision to use Silver Moon in venting their frustration. Southern Lone Blade was, of course, still in contact with these men. At the end of the day, none of them hid their plan to ambush the scumbag Silver Moon from him. Southern Lone Blade was originally reluctant to execute this idea, but when he saw the surge of morale in his comrades as a result of this plan, which was precisely what he had hoped to happen, he figured that he should not be so petty and just sacrifice the scumbag Silver Moon now that it had come to this point. Even though such an act would go against their professionalism, it was nothing in the face of the extraordinary significance that this plan was to them. They could always rebuild that particular quality of theirs next time. In contrast, the 6 men were more worried about the situation Southern Lone Blade was experiencing over at the auction house, yet the man simply replied fault with, "It's fine." On his end, the players at the auction house came wave after wave. The 2 robbers, who had been the subject of this mobbing yesterday, unfortunately escaped when they teleported away, and this had the crowd feeling a sense of satisfaction inwardly. However, the one today was truly arrogant. Facing against the thousands chastising him, this man remained unperturbed, and his expression was placid. They did not know where he had gotten the 2 cotton balls he had plugged his ears with as the man sat himself on the floor, even going so far as to pull out a manuscript of Butterfly Blue's work Pioneering the Horizons solo and was reading it with great relish. The players were all in a frenzy when they saw this, but there was nothing they could do against the man since they were in a safe zone. Some even used the term GM to threaten Southern Lone Blade, but all he did was laugh at their childishness. Their act of larceny was different from stealing accounts, as the former could be said to be part of MMO gameplay. Since the game had designed it such that the penalty of death came with the loss of levels, equipment, and in-game currency, everything the larcenists did was well within the rules of the game. How was anyone supposed to judge the concept of malicious intent when it came to parking? Would they require witnesses or physical evidence? Southern Lone Blade had spent plenty of time within the MMO community and refused to believe that there would be a GM who would be bothered by all this. Getting a reply of "let the players themselves settle among themselves" would be deemed as good treatment already. "Do you take me for a noob trying to intimidate yours truly like this?" Southern Lone Blade thrust his middle finger toward the player who raised the GM term and continued reading his book. The entire auction house was livid, and it was chaotic within. Goofy within the crowd had also been angered by this to the point of hurting a little inside. This guy sure is shameless. The fact that he remains so poised even in the face of this scene shows how much conviction he has toward larceny as a whole. The voice of public opinion was entirely incapable of defeating this man. A quick glance to the spectacle in the auction house, and anyone could tell that the normal operation of the place had been disrupted. There was no way the player would bother to retrieve the Utopian magic staff today even if that was his or her wish. The NPC was near where Southern Lone Blade stood, which was also the core of the mob. How would anyone manage to make their way over? The buyer would have to possess superhuman endurance and perseverance for them to succeed. Goofy was pissed, yet there was nothing he could do either. He did not wish to waste his time here with Southern Lone Blade, so he struggled to push his way out of the auction house. Svelte Dancer and Vast Lushness were secretly watching everything unfold near the auction house, and the former stuck her tongue out at this moment. "This is too much. To think he exposed their identities, how vicious. That young Master Han actually did the same thing yesterday," Vast Lushness said. "Birds of the same feather, I say." Svelte Dancer lamented. "Southern Lone Blade is pretty flagrant himself for not leaving despite the scene he has caused. I heard that his 2 lackeys had teleported right away in fear when this had happened then last night." Vast Lushness continued to compare. "Death is all that awaits the man even if he teleports away now. Eternal Dominion isn't here, so I reckon he is waiting over at the Bounty Assignment Hall, which is probably why Southern Lone Blade is stuck here at an impasse. I believe that he's thinking of waiting till Miles log off." Svelte Dancer easily guessed the arrangement Goofy and Eternal Dominion had employed this time because she had heard of how the 2 little lackeys had died last night. "At this rate, Miles really doesn't have any way around this matter," Vast Lushness said. Yes, quickly go to sleep," Svelte Dancer prayed, but she ended up seeing Goofy walk straight to the 2 ladies' hiding place. "Crap, have we been discovered?" Vast Lushness hurriedly shrank her head behind their cover. "There's no way." Svelte Dancer did the same. He's able to sense others through the thing he calls killing intent. Are you leaking out killing intent? Killing intent, what sort of killing intent will I have toward him? Neither do I. The two ladies were still wondering to themselves when Gouffé made it over and stood right before them. Hi. The two waved their hands at him. What's up? Gouffé asked. Ahem. It's getting pretty late, aren't you heading to rest yet? Svelte Dancer asked. Gouffé had already seen through what this girl was thinking and chuckled. What's the hurry? You got to go to work tomorrow. Svelte Dancer reminded him. Haven't I told you before? I'm a teacher, Gouffé said. So what of you being a teacher? Was what Svelte Dancer wanted to blurt out, but Vastlushness stopped her in time by glumly saying, it's the winter holidays. Chapter 585, Can you please give us a way out? Fuck. Svelte Dancer wished she could just spit at Gouffé. Seeing the gloomy look on the two women, Gouffé shook his head. Looks like you two have yet to see the wrongness of your ways ideologically. Go and die as far away as you can. Svelte Dancer's face was filled with anger. This isn't a bad spot. Squeezing himself beside the two and poking half of his head out from the side of the wall, Gouffé said, I still have to watch Southern Lone Blade's movement. Svelte Dancer and Vastlushness lost their position as a result of him squeezing in like this, leaving Svelte Dancer at a loss whether she should be laughing or crying as she complained to Vastlushness while stomping her feet in frustration. Why is this person so insufferable? Vastlushness could tell that he had sat here precisely to make them give up on using such unconventional means to retrieve the utopian magic staff, so all she could do was pat him on the back helplessly. Keep watching. Then, if you see the person who won the auction for the magic staff, ask him if he is willing to sell it back at a higher price. Sure thing. I'll help you ask if I do see the person. Gouffé nodded. I'll be leaving first, then. Vastlushness waved goodbye to the two. When Svelte Dancer saw that she was saying goodbye to her as well, she was nonplussed. What are you doing? I'm leaving, of course. Then, I'm leaving, too. What are you leaving for? Aren't you seeking Southern Lone Blade for revenge? You can do that with Miles. Vastlushness reminded her. That's right. Gouffé's head poked in and interjected to the conversation. Svelte Dancer thought that this made sense. Ultimately, this was the goal she was busying herself with the whole day, but why was it that she felt so unsatisfied about this? I'm going. Vastlushness waved once more and left. Svelte Dancer remained where she was. Looking at Gouffé's furtive action of hiding behind the corner of the wall, her anger rampaged within her, and she could not help but wishing to give this man a quick stab or two. In the end, before she got herself in position to do just that, Gouffé warned her without turning to face her. Enough with your nonsense. Svelte Dancer banged her head against the wall, feeling like she was about to die from exasperation. How long are you prepared to wait still? Svelte Dancer asked. Until he would get out, Gouffé replied. Just what sort of enmity do you have against that man? Svelte Dancer wondered why Gouffé was so persistent. To eliminate a threat to society, of course. Gouffé said matter-of-factly. Svelte Dancer was left speechless, for she had no idea just how she should criticize such an act. Then, what if he doesn't come out forever? Svelte Dancer was now speaking through gritted teeth. I've come prepared. Gouffé's hand went into his dimensional pocket and pulled out a book. If he's gonna spend his time reading inside, why can't I do the same? Where the heck did either of you get books? Svelte Dancer was stunned. I don't know where he got his, but this one here is something Eternal Dominion his students made, Gouffé said. Eternal Dominion. Is he a teacher as well? Svelte Dancer's final shred of hope was snuffed out. She had originally been thinking that, while Gouffé was a teacher, Eternal Dominion might not be one as well. As such, Gouffé would still be here now, but Eternal Dominion might quickly go offline, which meant that Gouffé had no way of comprehensively covering both sides like what he was doing now. However, I guess the nature of his work is around the same. Gouffé did not bother elaborating as he turned to smile at her. All you got to know is that there's such a thing as winter holiday for them too. Ah, Svelte Dancer whined in her heart. What are you reading? After she had somewhat recovered, Svelte Dancer tried taking a look at what Gouffé was reading. Gouffé lifted the book up and showed her the cover, Gate Opening Baji. What's that? It's about Baji Quan 1, Gouffé answered. Let me see. Svelte Dancer truly squatted beside Gufei. Reading is a pretty good way to pass the time. I'll take the book off your hands and let you stew here in boredom while you camp out here. Without another thought, Gufei handed the book over to her. Svelte Dancer flipped it open and read the first line. Outside the 9 provinces are 8 terrestrial branches. Beyond the 8 earthly branches are the 8 perimeters of heaven and earth. Past the 8 perimeters of heaven and earth lies the 8 extremities. Svelte Dancer shuddered as she swiftly dropped the book onto the ground. Gufei hurriedly went to pick it up, afraid that the book would be gone if the system refreshed. He had reacted with such anxiety that no one had ever seen him do before, not even when he dropped his moonlit nightfalls to the ground. Just as he was about to speak to Svelte Dancer, he instead saw the lady running away while wailing her heart out. "You can just ask me if you don't understand what you're reading." "Seriously?" Gufei mumbled, dusting the dirt of the book. The crying Svelte Dancer soon caught up with vast lushness, hugging her tightly with a grab. "I'm never playing with that monster anymore!" Svelte Dancer cried aloud. Dash 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 dash. Inside and outside the auction house, the bounty assignment hall, archer range, and thieves union. 9 players, 5 places, 2 books. Everybody was all camped out in each location waiting for their respective targets as time trickled by. There were no changes in any of those places. People who should arrive never arrived, while those unwanted flocked without a break. "Ah, this paragraph here is written beautifully." Gufei typed out a passage and sent it to Eternal Dominion. Yes, I really like that bit, too." Eternal Dominion began an animated discussion with Gufei after he received his message. Southern Lone Blade was engrossed in his reading as well. Holding the book with one hand while he extending his 2 fingers in the other like a scissor, he often moved it as if he were catching a fly. His actions created quite the confusion in the crowd that gathered, with people guessing it to be a new gesture of showing contempt, causing it to elicit even greater curses flung his way. As Southern Lone Blade reached the part where a masked killer appeared, he felt it connect to him on an intimate level, so he pulled out a piece of cloth and covered his face as well. In the end, the players that joined in on surrounding Southern Lone Blade thereafter did not even know how he looked, which only caused them to swear at him all the more intensely. As for the other 2 places, neither was lonely since there were more people. One team was playing Landlord 2, while another team played Tie for Golden Flower 3. They were things that Southern Lone Blade's gang would do to pass the time while waiting for their target to appear, so nobody felt tired playing the game for long. In the blink of an eye, it was already 11 p.m. This was about the time when Gufei would normally log off. Gufei, who had once been Southern Lone Blade's target for assassination, had also been his imaginary opponent for a time. Thus, Southern Lone Blade understood Gufei's routine as well as those he deemed as friends, so when he saw that it was about time, he pulled his friends list and tried testing it out. The result: "You've added 1,000 miles drunk as a friend." Southern Lone Blade nearly vomited a mouthful of blood. 1,000 miles drunk was too motherfucking vicious. He did not even restrict his friends list. Next, he heard a system prompt. "1,000 miles drunk has added you as a friend." After adding someone as a friend, there was no way for a player to reject when the other player reciprocated. This was a system rule. "So, are you coming out yet?" Gufei sent a message thusly. Southern Lone Blade did not answer, for his intentions had already been seen through by the other party. "I'm not sleeping tonight. I'll wait for you till daybreak." This was bad news that caused Southern Lone Blade to feel a breakdown coming on. Trembling as he asked, "Why must you pester me and my brothers to death, never letting go?" "To eliminate a threat from the society, of course." It was still the same answer. "You've eliminated us plenty enough as it is, why don't you change your target over to some other scoundrels?" Southern Lone Blade pretty much admitted that he was not a good egg. "Then, introduce them to me," Gufei said. Southern Lone Blade was depressed. He, of course, knew plenty of peers in the same line of work, and everyone would work together, compete, bear hatred, and even exploit one another as and whenever the need arose, but directly betraying their counterpart's identity was something anyone within the circle of this profession would despise. Southern Lone Blade was a professional and would never be that unprincipled. "Then, when are you letting us off?" Southern Lone Blade ultimately gave up. He had long accepted that he was no match for Gufei, but never would have thought that this person would sacrifice so much time and effort on him in such a fashion. After all, there must be the presence of benefit of sort when spending time like this, yet Gufei would gain no such benefit to speak of. All for the sake of killing him. That mage had sacrificed a whole week's worth of game time. A week's worth of game time was very precious in MMOs. Southern Lone Blade was well versed when it came to gaming, and he knew that, the more expert the player was, the more unlikely it was that they would willingly make such a sacrifice. Experts like Sword Demon and the other would not be willing to squander their whole week on this, but Gufei was an anomaly. In fact, he was not really a professional as far as an online gamer went. I've never really thought about this question. Gufei was telling the truth. He truly hadn't ever once considered it before. Even though losing a level was a very severe punishment, there was no way for him to truly kill the man at the end of the day. All it would take was a turn of their heads, and players could start anew. Until he turns over a new leaf, Gufei did not think of himself so highly that he could influence these men on such a spiritual level. Moreover, forcing them to become better men was all the more illogical. He might be able to camp out here for today, but did that mean that he was about to do this for the rest of his life? What an astute question. Gufei scratched his head. Southern Lone Blade was all the more despondent now, for this meant that they had been hunted down without any clear reason whatsoever. Is he thinking of forcing me to the point where I give up larceny as a profession? Fuck. If I can't rob people, what the hell am I even playing games for? Does he want me to go back to being a gold farmer? Southern Lone Blade, who had been a professional gamer for many years, never had any great ambitions of his own, or even considered setting up his workshop to get into any legitimate business. He was an advocate of freedom. Merely wanting to work in something casually, it was fine as long as he could put food on the table. His early days gaming had been spent doing the simplest menial works, such as gold farming. However, with the increase in his gaming standards and a few lucky breaks, he managed to join in some farm teams that required higher standards from players. Meanwhile, Southern Lone Blade had long had his eye on the larceny profession after seeing Parallel Worlds' rules and its huge player base. Southern Lone Blade was a renowned professional gamer, but he was not a peak expert like Sword Demon, Royal God Call, and the others, that would be known the moment his name was mentioned. Southern Lone Blade? Oh, I know that guy. He's a professional. Those 3 words were the extent of Southern Lone Blade's reputation in the MMO community. He's a professional. It was only after he started his time here in Parallel World, when he sought this particular avenue of work, and when he made a mad rush for levels all the way until he became one of the 5 unyielding experts, that he gained a bit of fame. Southern Lone Blade had keen eyes, and Parallel World's larceny business developed with great prosperity. It was like the saying, it is easy to change from living sparsely to that of great abundance, but it's difficult to adjust from living a life of luxury to that of scarcity. He simply could not accept going back to the tiring and hard life of gold farming after having a taste of the good life. Asking him to make an occupational change here would require finding him a more lucrative line of work than what he was currently doing. There were really such options available in Parallel World. Take that map that Glue had, for example. Items created by players often sold really well on the market. Similarly were the boat building in Linshui City, fashionable outfits and innerwear in the various cities, creation of attractive accessories, and even talk of someone managing to create cigarettes in-game. Still, all these works had distinguishing traits, and they were all products which required professional expertise. A cartographer would be able to draw maps, and those in the profession of making apparel in real life could create clothes without the aid of the tailoring system the game had in place. Sadly, for Southern Lone Blade, the man knew nothing beyond gaming. He was a professional gamer from head to toe. Besides being able to conduct larceny through the use of his skill in gaming, there was really no other line of work that he would be better at. That fucking bastard, 1,000 miles drunk. Why must he oppose me to such an extent? He's unwilling to tell me what I should do to get off the hook, either. Does he truly want me to die? Southern Lone Blade thought to himself with great resentment and agony, suddenly standing up from the floor of the auction house. Ah! The players surrounding the man all got a fright, none of them expecting him to stand up after lazing about on the ground this whole time. What are you looking at me for? Look any more, and I'll loot your equipment tomorrow. Southern Lone Blade suddenly bellowed at the onlookers around him. Fuck, he still dares to be so arrogant. The curses began to flood in. Southern Lone Blade did not respond, merely flashing them a cold smile as he stared at a few players fiercely swearing at him. These players suddenly felt their hearts shudder, for if they were truly targeted, none of them was acquainted with any of the players around them. While we have the numbers now, who will really know me after? Who's going to take care of me? Who's going to protect me? These thoughts ran through these players' heads as the swearing slowly simmered. Chapter 586, Scaring Out a Path. Southern Lone Blade's glare coldly swept through the gathered crowd, showing an imposing look that disregarded life or death. The crowd began to feel their hearts waver, and plenty of them avoided making eye contact with him, some even moved to hide their faces. As the saying went, people may spend 1,000 days as a thief, but there is no way anyone can defend against theft for 1,000 days. Besides, there was no way to catch a thief in this game and beat them to death, so it could really be pursued as a lifelong profession. What about the average player, then? Could they make a living out of preventing theft? This was especially effective on the players standing at the forefront, with plenty of them feeling great remorse, thinking that they had provoked a very troublesome person, the sort of trouble that would leave a lingering scent leading back to themselves even if they did their best to wash clean of the matter. These players all began to cover their faces as they turned their heads away, searching for a way to avoid Southern Lone Blade altogether. Southern Lone Blade took advantage of this sudden chaos to make his way out. It was as if the crowd were of one mind, thinking to themselves that it was not going to get better even if he walked away now. Considering how long they had been confronting him, it was apparent that they had already offended the man, thus, there was no point in them being afraid anymore. They would just kill him if he dared to step out and abscond far away once the deed was done, making it impossible for Southern Lone Blade to find them after. It was with such thought that these men allowed Southern Lone Blade to pass. Plenty of them secretly took out their weapons, intending to eliminate the evil for the sake of the people the moment he stepped outside. What use would there be in hiding now if Southern Lone Blade had already planned to target someone? However, who would have thought that he would not head outside but go to an auction panel to type away on it after squeezing through the crowd? Instead, in the next moment, everybody saw the words he had typed into the search bar as it was displayed on the panel: teleportation scroll. Fuck. Someone groaned loudly. This man was about to use a teleportation scroll and disappear, which proved that he was unfazed by them even with their threats. It seemed that having a guilty conscience and evil being unable to triumph over righteousness were all mere platitudes. The crowd began to surge forward again once they thought of this, and the players that were planning to sneak attack the person outed themselves. Hurling curses his way, they waved their weapons high above their heads. Southern Lone Blade ignored them all as his search for a teleportation scroll bore fruit. Current research revealed that the highest drop rate of this item came from level 50 or so magic-type monsters. However, killing a level 50 monster would mean killing something 10 levels above the average level of players, and this was only achievable to a truly powerful team. Additionally, this item had an extremely limited availability since it was a chance drop. Thus, while it was not the sort of high-end item that the average players had yet to hear about, given the current rate of production for this item and that it was a one-time use commodity, most players were still unable to use such type of scrolls as common tools, and using it was viewed as an act of burning money in the eyes of many. Southern Lone Blade, who was playing Parallel World to earn money, was all the more unwilling to burn so much in-game currency just for this sort of thing. Unfortunately, he was simply left with no choice at this point in time. Seeing the series of numbers that came after that teleportation scroll, he could almost hear his heart shatter into a million pieces. He gritted his teeth for the longest time before he hard-heartedly smashed that key on the display. As Southern Lone Blade turned around, someone began shouting, "Don't let him through." He might have bought the scroll, but he still had to make his way over to the distribution NPC to retrieve it. Southern Lone Blade stared at the player who had shouted that, nodding. "I'll keep you in mind." The player could not help but shudder as he felt a chill past his heart. At first, he thought that Southern Lone Blade had a guilty conscience and that righteousness would triumph over evil, but all that confidence in him evaporated now that he got singled out by Southern Lone Blade himself. He shrank his neck back a little, but he puffed out his chest to give himself a bit of encouragement. "Who are you trying to fool?" Larry's Saber, Strength, and Agility variant. The current market price is about 200 gold coins. Karen's battle gear, visually appealing, but the stats are average. At most it would go for 100 gold coins on the market. Ring of Limits. Now that's a good one. A magic defense ring, able to resist ice, fire, and lightning, all the 3 types of spell in this game. Even though it increases resistance by just a little bit, it shouldn't have much problems getting 500 gold coins. Vitality Emblem. It increases your agility. It's a bit wasted on you. It should be worth 300 gold coins if I sell it to an archer or a thief. Southern Lone Blade recited everything unhurriedly, evaluating every equipment this player had on him and even pulling out a booklet to write down everything. Finally, he sighed. Looting all your gear will earn me around 2,750 gold coins. You've done pretty well for yourself. Silence. Southern Lone Blade had just demonstrated the quality of a professional larcenist through his accurate evaluation of all that player's equipment. In that moment, all the others onlooking these two appraised the said player's equipment, as if they were witnessing a tragedy unfold. Someone will quickly be in contact with you. Southern Lone Blade shut the booklet with a resounding clap, as if he had just sentenced the man to his death, before glowering at the others present. Anyone else? Everybody's eyes began to dart away once more, and Southern Lone Blade took this chance to leave the auction panel and walk off. All the players before him avoided his gaze and instinctively opened a path for him. Southern Lone Blade laughed mirthlessly. He had such a good grasp of the average player's mentality, but he would always be mistaken when it came to Thousand Miles Drunk. That man's way of thinking just isn't that of a gamer. Southern Lone Blade snapped the quill in his hand the moment that guy's name came to mind. He was now in full view of everyone, yet no one stepped forth to impede him, so Southern Lone Blade successfully retrieved his teleportation scroll straight from the distribution NPC. Turning back, he swept his gaze across the whole lot of players that did not even dare to look him in the eyes and departed from the auction house with a quick unfurling of the scroll. Everybody was rooted to where they stood for a long time. Exchanging glances, they were uncertain on what they should be saying now. Their thoughts were all over the place. Even though that robber's flagrant act had left them feeling discontented, not one of them had even dared to stand out for fear of being targeted. Before their benefits suffered any real loss, a person's absolute sincerity would always be hidden deep in the recesses of their hearts. The crowd was quiet for a good while before slowly leaving the auction house with their heads hanging low in shame. After Goofy contacted Southern Lone Blade, he no longer hid in that corner but repositioned himself in the open clearing outside the auction houses instead. He strolled about while he read his book leisurely, knowing that a whole throng of players inside was surrounding Southern Lone Blade. Thus, when he saw the mob suddenly swarm out as if they had been let out of class, he realized at once that Southern Lone Blade had left the auction house, too. He quickly fired off a message to Eternal Dominion who was standing guard at the bounty assignment hall. "Nope. I didn't see Southern Lone Blade," Eternal Dominion replied with surety. "He didn't use the Windchaser's emblem, huh?" Goofy muttered to himself, knowing full well that Southern Lone Blade had seen through their plan, and quickly hailed a departing random player. "Where's the robber Southern Lone Blade?" "He left," the person answered. "How did he leave?" "He bought a teleportation scroll and disappeared," was the reply. "How did he get near an auction panel?" Goofy was surprised. Considering how all those players were mobbing that larcenist, he was sure that Southern Lone Blade had no chance of escaping unless he logged out there and then or activated the teleportation function of his Windchaser's emblem. The person did not say a word in response to Goofy's question, which indicated that Southern Lone Blade's means to get near an auction panel did not shine a good light on their lot. Simply put, they all succumbed to the threat of that team of larcenists. "I have no idea," this person mumbled before leaving in a hurry. Goofy was stunned. Soon, he discovered that the players departing from the place all had the same heavy air on them. It was in stark contrast to the glee they had shown while surrounding the robber Southern Lone Blade beforehand. Just what in the world happened? Goofy questioned a few more players, but everybody's replies to his questions were evasive. However, after getting bits of information from the handful he had approached, he still managed to get the gist of what had happened. In the end, All he could do was to heave a deep sigh. Unhealthy practices like this in real life had been completely brought over to the MMO world, so who was it that claimed that online games were unrealistic? Furthermore, doing such vile stuff became all the more frightening online than in real life. In reality, the perpetrator would easily be subdued by the mob and sent to the relevant department for justice, and even if that did not happen, the crowd would have beaten the person to death, so at the very least, no one would need to worry about potential reprisal going forward. However, the knowledge that Southern Lone Blade was another player that would respawn upon death, everyone got a really good sense of just how terrifying reprisals could be. Gufei did not blame these people for having such thoughts, for in this troubled world, even the officials advised everyone not to put up an excessive resistance to the point that their enemies would lose all sense of reason. The bad guys were too much at the advantage here, whereas the good guys lacked enough security. There's no need to wait there anymore. Southern Lone Blade got away. Gufei sent this message to Eternal Dominion. Where did he escape to? To Eternal Dominion, Southern Lone Blade managing to escape was equivalent to him losing potential income. He used a teleportation scroll. No idea where that man is right now, Gufei replied. Then, what now? Eternal Dominion asked. There's no way we can locate him anytime soon, so you should go do your thing. He told the other this before contacting Southern Lone Blade. I dare you to tell me where you are now. Just how depressed got Southern Lone Blade after receiving such a message? He had the urge to blocklist Gufei, but thinking about it in another way, it was just 2 messages with a few words inside, which sought to provoke him psychologically. It would not do any harm if he could show some fortitude, and there was no telling that he could not gain some useful information from doing so. Thus, he decided to let Gufei remain as his friend and of course did not bother replying to the latter's dare. Just as he got his bearings on this new location he had teleported himself to, he contacted his comrades. There's no way we can lead a happy life with 1,000 miles drunk around. Southern Lone Blade broached the subject in this message. What? Both teams that had been playing Landlord and Tie for Golden Flower all this while were having the time of their lives when they received his abrupt message. That guy has latched onto us, refusing to let go. If we don't take him down for good, he'll just remain a repressed trauma to us, Southern Lone Blade explained. Can't we just keep our distance from him? Flame-Cinched Clothes meekly asked, showing how little confidence he had with that question. The game world was huge, it was hardly difficult avoiding someone, but Southern Lone Blade simply could not stomach this outrage. Trees needed bark to survive, and humans needed to be able to breathe to live. Most people were willing to throw away their faces for the sake of living, but if they were to swallow this bitter pill, they would surely shorten their lifespan by a decade at the very least. Didn't that fleeting smile person mention that he has a plan to take care of 1,000 miles drunk? I wonder what he has in mind? Glue reminded everyone that settling Gufei was already their next big assignment, which Southern Lone Blade and Flame-Cinched Clothes seemed to have forgotten. Chapter 586, Scaring Out a Path. Southern Lone Blade's glare coldly swept through the gathered crowd, showing an imposing look that disregarded life or death. The crowd began to feel their hearts waver, and plenty of them avoided making eye contact with him, some even moved to hide their faces. As the saying went, people may spend 1,000 days as a thief, but there is no way anyone can defend against theft for 1,000 days. Besides, there was no way to catch a thief in this game and beat them to death, so it could really be pursued as a lifelong profession. What about the average player, then? Could they make a living out of preventing theft? This was especially effective on the players standing at the forefront, with plenty of them feeling great remorse, thinking that they had provoked a very troublesome person, the sort of trouble that would leave a lingering scent leading back to themselves even if they did their best to wash clean of the matter. These players all began to cover their faces as they turned their heads away, searching for a way to avoid Southern Lone Blade altogether. Southern Lone Blade took advantage of this sudden chaos to make his way out. It was as if the crowd were of one mind, thinking to themselves that it was not going to get better even if he walked away now. Considering how long they had been confronting him, it was apparent that they had already offended the man, thus, there was no point in them being afraid anymore. They would just kill him if he dared to step out and abscond far away once the deed was done, making it impossible for Southern Lone Blade to find them after. It was with such thought that these men allowed Southern Lone Blade to pass. Plenty of them secretly took out their weapons, intending to eliminate the evil for the sake of the people the moment he stepped outside. What use would there be in hiding now if Southern Lone Blade had already planned to target someone? However, who would have thought that he would not head outside but go to an auction panel to type away on it after squeezing through the crowd? Instead, in the next moment, everybody saw the words he had typed into the search bar as it was displayed on the panel: teleportation scroll. Fuck! Someone groaned loudly. This man was about to use a teleportation scroll and disappear, which proved that he was unfazed by them even with their threats. It seemed that having a guilty conscience and evil being unable to triumph over righteousness were all mere platitudes. The crowd began to surge forward again once they thought of this, and the players that were planning to sneak attack the person outed themselves. Hurling curses his way, they waved their weapons high above their heads. Southern Lone Blade ignored them all as his search for a teleportation scroll bore fruit. Current research revealed that the highest drop rate of this item came from level 50 or so magic-type monsters. However, killing a level 50 monster would mean killing something 10 levels above the average level of players, and this was only achievable to a truly powerful team. Additionally, this item had an extremely limited availability since it was a chance drop. Thus, while it was not the sort of high-end item that the average players had yet to hear about, given the current rate of production for this item and that it was a one-time use commodity, most players were still unable to use such type of scrolls as common tools, and using it was viewed as an act of burning money in the eyes of many. Southern Lone Blade, who was playing Parallel World to earn money, was all the more unwilling to burn so much in-game currency just for this sort of thing. Unfortunately, he was simply left with no choice at this point in time. Seeing the series of numbers that came after that teleportation scroll, he could almost hear his heart shatter into a million pieces. He gritted his teeth for the longest time before he hard-heartedly smashed that key on the display. As Southern Lone Blade turned around, someone began shouting, "Don't let him through." He might have bought the scroll, but he still had to make his way over to the distribution NPC to retrieve it. Southern Lone Blade stared at the player who had shouted that, nodding. "I'll keep you in mind." The player could not help but shudder as he felt a chill past his heart. At first, he thought that Southern Lone Blade had a guilty conscience and that righteousness would triumph over evil, but all that confidence in him evaporated now that he got singled out by Southern Lone Blade himself. He shrank his neck back a little, but he puffed out his chest to give himself a bit of encouragement. "Who are you trying to fool?" Larry Saber, Strength, and Agility variant. The current market price is about 200 gold coins. Karen's battle gear, visually appealing, but the stats are average. At most it would go for 100 gold coins on the market. Ring of Limits, now that's a good one. A magic defense ring, able to resist ice, fire, and lightning, all the 3 types of spell in this game. Even though it increases resistance by just a little bit, it shouldn't have much problems getting 500 gold coins. Vitality Emblem, it increases your agility. It's a bit wasted on you. It should be worth 300 gold coins if I sell it to an archer or a thief. Southern Lone Blade recited everything unhurriedly, evaluating every equipment this player had on him and even pulling out a booklet to write down everything. Finally, he sighed. "Looting all your gear will earn me around 2,750 gold coins. You've done pretty well for yourself." Silence. Southern Lone Blade had just demonstrated the quality of a professional larcenist through his accurate evaluation of all that player's equipment. In that moment, all the others onlooking these two appraised the said player's equipment, as if they were witnessing a tragedy unfold. "Someone will quickly be in contact with you." Southern Lone Blade shut that booklet with a resounding clap, as if he had just sentenced the man to his death, before glowering at the others present. "Anyone else?" Everybody's eyes began to dart away once more, and Southern Lone Blade took this chance to leave the auction panel and walk off. All the players before him avoided his gaze and instinctively opened a path for him. Southern Lone Blade laughed mirthlessly. He had such a good grasp of the average player's mentality, but he would always be mistaken when it came to Thousand Miles Drunk. That man's way of thinking just isn't that of a gamer. Southern Lone Blade snapped the quill in his hand the moment that guy's name came to mind. He was now in full view of everyone, yet no one stepped forth to impede him, so Southern Lone Blade successfully retrieved his teleportation scroll straight from the distribution NPC. Turning back, he swept his gaze across the whole lot of players that did not even dare to look him in the eyes and departed from the auction house with a quick unfurling of the scroll. Everybody was rooted to where they stood for a long time. Exchanging glances, they were uncertain on what they should be saying now. Their thoughts were all over the place. Even though that robber's flagrant act had left them feeling discontented, not one of them had even dared to stand out for fear of being targeted. Before their benefits suffered any real loss, a person's absolute sincerity would always be hidden deep in the recesses of their hearts. The crowd was quiet for a good while before slowly leaving the auction house with their heads hanging low in shame. After Goofy contacted Southern Lone Blade, he no longer hid in that corner but repositioned himself in the open clearing outside the auction houses instead. He strolled about while he read his book leisurely, knowing that a whole throng of players inside was surrounding Southern Lone Blade. Thus, when he saw the mob suddenly swarm out as if they had been let out of class, he realized at once that Southern Lone Blade had left the auction house, too. He quickly fired off a message to Eternal Dominion, who was standing guard at the bounty assignment hall. "Nope. I didn't see Southern Lone Blade," Eternal Dominion replied with surety. "He didn't use the Windchaser's emblem, huh?" Goofy muttered to himself, knowing full well that Southern Lone Blade had seen through their plan, and quickly hailed a departing random player. "Where's the robber Southern Lone Blade?" "He left," the person answered. "How did he leave?" "He bought a teleportation scroll and disappeared," was the reply. "How did he get near an auction panel?" Goofy was surprised. Considering how all those players were mobbing that larcenist, he was sure that Southern Lone Blade had no chance of escaping unless he logged out there and then or activated the teleportation function of his Windchaser's emblem. The person did not say a word in response to Goofy's question, which indicated that Southern Lone Blade's means to get near an auction panel did not shine a good light on their lot. Simply put, they all succumbed to the threat of that team of larcenists. "I have no idea," this person mumbled before leaving in a hurry. Goofy was stunned. Soon, he discovered that the players departing from the place all had the same heavy air on them. It was in stark contrast to the glee they had shown while surrounding the robber Southern Lone Blade beforehand. Just what in the world happened? Goofy questioned a few more players, but everybody's replies to his questions were evasive. However, after getting bits of information from the handful he had approached, he still managed to get the gist of what had happened. In the end, all he could do was to heave a deep sigh. Unhealthy practices like this in real life had been completely brought over to the MMO world, so who was it that claimed that online games were unrealistic? Furthermore, doing such vile stuff became all the more frightening online than in real life. In reality, the perpetrator would easily be subdued by the mob and sent to the relevant department for justice, and even if that did not happen, the crowd would have beaten the person to death, so at the very least, no one would need to worry about potential reprisal going forward. However, the knowledge that Southern Lone Blade was another player that would respawn upon death, everyone got a really good sense of just how terrifying reprisals could be. Goofy did not blame these people for having such thoughts, for in this troubled world, even the officials advised everyone not to put up an excessive resistance to the point that their enemies would lose all sense of reason. The bad guys were too much at the advantage here, whereas the good guys lacked enough security. There's no need to wait there anymore. Southern Lone Blade got away. Goofy sent this message to Eternal Dominion. Where did he escape to? To Eternal Dominion, Southern Lone Blade managing to escape was equivalent to him losing potential income. He used a teleportation scroll. No idea where that man is right now, Goofy replied. Then, what now? Eternal Dominion asked. There's no way we can locate him anytime soon, so you should go do your thing. He told the other this before contacting Southern Lone Blade. I dare you to tell me where you are now. Just how depressed got Southern Lone Blade after receiving such a message? He had the urge to blocklist Goofy, but thinking about it in another way, it was just 2 messages with a few words inside, which sought to provoke him psychologically. It would not do any harm if he could show some fortitude, and there was no telling that he could not gain some useful information from doing so. Thus, he decided to let Goofy remain as his friend and of course did not bother replying to the latter's dare. Just as he got his bearings on this new location he had teleported himself to, He contacted his comrades. "There's no way we can lead a happy life with 1,000 miles drunk around." Southern Lone Blade broached the subject in this message. What? Both teams that had been playing landlord and tie for golden flower all this while were having the time of their lives when they received his abrupt message. "That guy has latched onto us, refusing to let go. If we don't take him down for good, he'll just remain a repressed trauma to us," Southern Lone Blade explained. "Can't we just keep our distance from him?" Flame Cinched Clothes meekly asked, showing how little confidence he had with that question. The game world was huge, it was hardly difficult avoiding someone, but Southern Lone Blade simply could not stomach this outrage. Trees needed bark to survive, and humans needed to be able to breathe to live. Most people were willing to throw away their faces for the sake of living, but if they were to swallow this bitter pill, they would surely shorten their lifespan by a decade at the very least. "Didn't that fleeting smile person mention that he has a plan to take care of 1,000 miles drunk? I wonder what he has in mind?" Glue reminded everyone that settling Goofy was already their next big assignment, which Southern Lone Blade and Flame Cinched Clothes seemed to have forgotten. Chapter 587, Do Not Even Think of Trying Anything with Me Around. That guy. Southern Lone Blade had truly forgotten about Fleeting Smile's existence. Actually, Silvermoon's guess before was not off the mark. Southern Lone Blade and the others had already resolved not to pick up any request related to 1,000 miles drunk. Unfortunately, they still ended up meeting someone who intended to eliminate 1,000 miles drunk. Having felt that outrightly rejecting that man's request back then would be far too discouraging to the other party, he gave them the vague chance as a show of support, which was why he had casually quoted the 5-digit figure of 20,000 gold coins. A single level for 20,000 gold coins. This insane price he had quoted made Southern Lone Blade feel a little embarrassed. Glue even privately messaged him, asking if he had gone insane back then. However, before Southern Lone Blade could even give an answer to Glue, the other party ended up consulting him on the matter measuredly. As it turned out, Southern Lone Blade was not the one who had gone crazy, but it was the priest Fleeting Smile standing before him that had lost his mind. Instead, to accept a price of 20,000 gold coins for a single level, Southern Lone Blade suspected that he would laugh himself awake from the dream if the target were not 1,000 miles drunk. Still, even if the target was 1,000 miles drunk, the high remuneration was so very attractive that Southern Lone Blade felt it would be worth going all out just this once. Nothing was truer than the saying high risks come with high rewards. However, when the details of the agreement were finalized and it was time to pay the deposit, Fleeting Smile mentioned that he needed to gather the necessary funds. Southern Lone Blade merely chuckled when he heard this. 20,000 gold coins was indeed a huge sum, so it was hardly surprising for the other party to be unable to pull out such an amount at one go, but what he had asked for was just the deposit, which it would come at around 3,000 to 5,000 gold coins given their conventional rates, so that should not be a sum that a wealthy player could not fork out. Southern Lone Blade suspected that Fleeting Smile had merely been humoring him, which was why he had accepted his exorbitant price of 20,000 gold coins. Especially since there had been no contact in these past 2 days, Southern Lone Blade felt that his guess held water. If that person was truly a wealthy man, would he have any trouble getting the 3,000 to 5,000 gold coins needed for the deposit in these few days? There was no doubt that the man wanted to deal with 1,000 miles drunk, but there was a good chance that he had been frightened off by his quote of 20,000 gold coins, which was how it was supposed to go. How much of a grudge must there be to justify that 20,000 gold coins for a level? Did he have some sort of patricidal vendetta against 1,000 miles drunk? Has that guy contacted you recently? Southern Lone Blade asked Glue. Although the 20,000 gold coin price he had opened with before was done to scare the other party into backing down. But now that he had to stomach this belly full of rage, Southern Lone Blade was honestly starting to consider searching for others to work together with and viciously finishing off that scourge known as 1,000 miles drunk. Nope. The last time was that day after that auction, Glue replied. Auction. Southern Lone Blade muttered this word. That was what had triggered their recent tragedy. He wanted to find out who the buyer was that day as well. In the end, he left after a while when that person didn't show up. Glue replied. Southern Lone Blade did not say a word for a while. Suddenly talking about that person and considering everything that had happened, Southern Lone Blade realized something at once. Dash 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 dash. After Goofy pestered Southern Lone Blade with "I dare you to tell me where you are now" a few more times, the latter ended up restricting any incoming messages, not even once replying to the former. This made Goofy feel ennui. Now that it was the winter holidays, he had more time to play the game, and just as he was about to demonstrate the full extent of his kung fu prowess and take care of the whole lot of them, the other party ended up running away faster than a fleeing hare. I'm stuck searching for the target yet again. There was nothing more frustrating to Goofy than this. Bounty mission was Goofy's main source of activity in the game, and locating the target happened to be a huge part of it, which explained why he found this particular affair so tiresome. Actually, he was very envious of how Vast Lushness was being treated. Rather than needing to head out to find people to fight, people would actually take the initiative to come looking for her. Goofy saw no signs of those he wanted to find after walking down 2 whole streets, nor did any criminal came forward to rob him. Now that he had a lot of time on him, Goofy felt all the more lonely. Usually, playing around with bounty mission for 2 hours or so was fine, but Goofy found it to be a little unbearable if he were to keep doing that overnight. Besides, Goofy hardly found any joy in the act, since most of the average players he ended up facing would die with a slash of his sword. The idle Goofy could only choose to log out, but because he was a little unfamiliar with the layout of Beishi City, he had to ask a passing pedestrian where the nearest designated log-off point was before he made his way over. Soon, Goofy learned what it meant to walk along boundless expanse with no end in sight, what it meant not to reach his destination despite wearing down metal shoes, and what it meant to search endlessly in a dream. One reaching the designated log-off point in the Archer range, the moment Goofy stepped through the main entrance, he caught sight of 3 figures in his periphery. He turned to look and saw Glue, flame-cinched clothes, and the other person, whose name he was unsure of but recognized as the other priest in Southern Lone Blade's team of 7. The 3 men were seated by the base of the wall, holding handcrafted cards as they had quite an intense time with each other. Glue and the priest, who had already spotted Goofy upon lifting their eyes from the game, stared with dumbfounded eyes at the man. Only Flame-Cinched Clothes, who had his back on Goofy, remained oblivious to this fact even as he raised his hand high with the 4 cards in hand. Slamming them down onto the ground, he shouted, "4 twos! Ha 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 ha!" The expression on Glue and Verdant Timber's face went stiff, their eyes not even registering the bomb Flame-Cinched Clothes had dropped. Seeing the rascal still gleeful at what he did, the 2 men twisted their mouths to gesture toward his back. Flame-Cinched Clothes went cold as he hunched himself, killing intent showing on his face as he asked the 2 in hushed tones, "Is he here?" Before either man could reply, Flame-Cinched Clothes turned around, and he went even more exaggeratedly rigid than the 2. "Hey, having fun?" Goofy was elated to see these 3, immediately making his way over to them. "What are you doing?" Flame-Cinched Clothes scrambled back a good distance, the cards strewn all over the floor. "Where's Southern Lone Blade?" Goofy enjoyed getting straight to the point. "We don't know." The 3 men naturally gave such an answer. Glue grabbed hold of Flame-Cinched Clothes, reminding him that they were at a spawn point, and it was one that let players log out. "Bumping into you 3 ain't too bad, either." "Heading out?" Goofy asked. The 3 shook their heads mechanically. "I am about to log out, too." "I truly didn't expect to find you 3 hiding here having fun," Goofy continued. With a mouthful of bitter anguish, the 3 men thought inwardly just how unlucky they were. Glue quickly sent a message to the other 4 players not present. "We've been discovered." "How?" "1,000 miles drunk." "How did he end up there?" "He said that he's passing by on his way to log out." "Fuck that shameless asshole, didn't he say that he's not gonna sleep tonight?" Southern Lone Blade was extremely dispirited. This 1,000 miles drunk is simply too damn shameless for going back on his words mere minutes ago. Glue was speechless. The man was already right before them now. What was the point of quibbling over those things at this stage? "What are you playing?" Goofy flipped over the cards they dropped and had a look. The cards looked to have been self-made, and they looked to be specifically used for landlord. There were not even the different suits, directly depicting the series from A to K. "How do you make the Joker?" Curious on how they drew the Jokers, Goofy ended up flipping them over. "Damn, that's rather realistic." Goofy praised. Of the two jokers for this game, the big joker had a large king character drawn on it and the small joker had a small king. The three men felt the impulse to kill Goofy wash over them. It was just unfortunate that Safe Zone played no favorites and did not just protect them. Alright. Goofy stopped grinning. Neatly packing the cards all over the floor, he handed them over to Flame-Cinched Clothes before he stared at the three. Are you three hiding here trying to assassinate someone? We're playing cards. What business is it of yours? The priest Verdant Timber decidedly kept his mouth shut when he saw how the other two had not even coordinated their rebuttal. Forget about getting anything done with me around. Goofy was calm and composed when he said this. It was the winter holidays, after all. There were no classes tomorrow, and that greatly emboldened him. HMPH. Why do you care? Flame-Cinched Clothes was obviously the most afraid of Goofy out of the three, yet he instead had the most to say in front of the man, which only made it more evident just how anxious and panicked he was inside. Come, let's continue. Flame-Cinched Clothes dragged Glue and Verdant Timber with him, calmly hoping to continue their game of cards in another corner. The two hesitated for a bit, evidently a little annoyed by the childish defiance Flame-Cinched Clothes was showing. Still, when they considered the fact that they could do nothing else with Goofy blocking their path out the door, their only options were either to continue with their card game or log out. Thus, each of them threw a glance over at Goofy before they headed to where Flame-Cinched Clothes was to resume playing their card game. The three were preoccupied the entire time, playing out their cards even as they furtively looked at what Goofy was doing. As for Goofy, all he did was position himself at one side. Staring at the three men, he suppressed his smile and did not say a word. Going through the cards as they played, once Glue drew his cards and Flame-Cinched Clothes went to get his own, he discovered that there were only 3 cards left, which was very strange. Did you draw the wrong amount? I should be the one getting the last card. As players who often played this game, they could easily tell that the count was off, and Flame-Cinched Clothes should still have another card right now. We're short of a card? Flame-Cinched Clothes looked all around. When the cards scattered all over the floor, it was possible for the wind to blow one away right under everyone's noses. In the end, as they went about searching for that lost card, Flame-Cinched Clothes caught sight of Goofy's treacherous smile and immediately realized. Did you hide one of our cards? Nonsense, Goofy coolly replied. I've clearly hidden 4. Fuck. Give us back the cards. Flame-Cinched Clothes fumed. Didn't I already tell you guys? You all won't get anything done with me around, Goofy said even as he revealed the hand, the 4 cards wedged between his fingers. Next, with a twist of his wrist and flick of his fingers, he chanted a spell incantation. Twin incineration. Flames came to life on Goofy's fingertips. This fire he had created enveloped the 4 cards with a motion of his wrist. Even though the flames that a mage conjured needed mana to sustain its burn, and it would only be ablaze for a moment, given how flammable the cards were, being engulfed in the fire thusly was already enough to reduce them into ashes, which scattered with the wind. I'll just make them again myself. Flame-Cinched Clothes was infuriated. Pulling out writing materials from his dimensional pocket, he was about to redo the cards he had just lost. It's fine. Glue stopped Flame-Cinched Clothes from making such a petty action. After he calmed himself down, he gazed at Goofy. What's the meaning of wasting your time with us? You might have no problem squandering a day or 2 in this fashion, but do you intend to do this your whole life? Goofy laughed. Of course I won't be doing this that long. But since our paths have coincidentally crossed, I won't be able to sleep tonight if I pretend not to see you all. Seriously though, there are 7 spawn points in a city. Why did you guys choose this one I happen to be logging out of? Why aren't you the one at fault for choosing this place to log off? Flame-Cinched Clothes called out. Could it be fate? Goofy mused. Flame-Cinched Clothes nearly vomited blood. Just what do you wanna do? Glue asked. Your boss asked me the same thing. It's really a profound question. I've been thinking about it for quite some time myself. Actually, I can't really afford to go on like this with you people, either, but I just don't know if it's me or it's you guys that are unlucky for us to constantly bump into one another. It's not my style to just turn a blind eye once I chance upon something like this. Alright, I see you're also having a really agonizing time. Consider everything you've caused. What do you think we should do about it? Gufei asked. Chapter 588, Everyone vomits blood together. What to do? Gufei was unable to answer this question, so he mercilessly kicked that ball into Glue's court. This naturally meant that they should make a statement, and if what they expressed was something he found to be agreeable, Gufei would consider letting them go. But everyone already more or less knew why Gufei was constantly on their case all this time. This was the legendary lending a hand upon seeing injustice along the road one, except that he was exceptionally lucky. The man was still helping out despite doing it for so long and lending a hand every time he met Southern Lone Blade's team. This consequently pushed that lot past the point of tolerance. By Gufei's words, the plans of Southern Lone Blade and his men could only see constant disruption from Gufei unless they washed their hands off this type of business entirely. If that's the case, there's nothing for us to talk about. Glue was helpless. They were really hoping to reach a concord with Gufei, but his demand was simply too much, since he wanted them to give up their career altogether. You guys are really dedicated, Gufei remarked. He had already expected these men not to give up so easily. It was just a game, after all. Were this in real life, I would have maimed them for making such a choice. Gufei heartlessly thought to himself when this lot decided not to give up. With negotiations failing before it began, Gufei was not in the least bit of a hurry. He regarded the three men with interest, wondering just what the three men were planning to do. Flame-cinched clothes, verdant timber, and Glue huddled together and began whispering with one another. Throwing a hateful glare at Gufei, they promptly spat, "Since we can't afford to offend you, we'll just avoid you." With that, the three men did not even get up and just cleanly exited the game. Hee hee. Gufei chuckled as he chose to log out as well. Half an hour later, 3 white lights glowed within the archer range as the 3 players logged back into the game. The first thing they all did was to take in their surroundings, making sure that Gufei was nowhere to be found. 1,000 miles drunk logged off the moment you guys went offline. Southern Lone Blade sent this message to Glue. Glue exhaled a heavy sigh before smiling at the 2 other men. "He's gone." Flame-cinched clothes was immediately at ease as well, casually cursing, "That bastard." Silvermoon still online. Glue checked his friends list and reported. "Let's continue." Flame-cinched clothes pulled out his deck of cards. Gufei had previously burned 4 of their cards, so he was now checking which they were. Flame-cinched clothes counted the cards in his mind even as he wondered aloud. Speaking of which, Silvermoon and 1,000 miles drunk have quite the sordid past. Yeah? Actually, if we just tell him that we are planning to ambush Silvermoon, he just might not create trouble for us. Flame-cinched clothes did not hear either of his comrades answer him when he was done speaking, so he lifted his head to look, only to find the 2 maintaining a look of catatonia as they stared right behind him. "You guys. No way. Is he?" Flame-cinched clothes slowly turned around and saw Gufei's beaming face, which filled him with hate at once, no more than half a meter away from them. "You're missing the 4, 8, 9, and Q. Gufei informed him. "Fuck. Why are you back?" Flame-cinched clothes moaned. "I went offline to grab some super and take a shower before logging back on." "Who would have thought that you guys would coincidentally be back as well?" Gufei asked. The 3 felt the true depths of despair right now. "So, you guys are thinking of ambushing Silvermoon?" Flame-cinched clothes had no idea that Gufei had logged back on moments ago and that the latter had heard everything when the former wondered aloud. "See, that's where I'm a little confused. Although I agree that Silvermoon deserves death, isn't he your employer for acquiring the utopian magic staff?" Gufei asked. The 3 were in tears. Why were they going around to attack Silvermoon? Plainly put, was it not because Gufei kept giving them trouble to the point that they had no other way to vent all their accumulated resentments? However, now that Gufei himself was asking them this question, just how were they supposed to answer that? Tell him that he had bullied them so much they decided to use Silvermoon as a punching bag? They obviously could not admit to anything like that right to his face. It was just like Flame-cinched clothes being scared of Gufei yet still putting up the farce that he was unafraid of the man when in front of Gufei. Gufei gazed at the 3 in hopes of them providing him with an answer, yet the 3 remained adamantly mum, unwilling to tell him anything even if they were beaten to death. Broken Water Arrow and the others should still be with Silvermoon, Doesn't that mean that you will have to pit yourselves up against them if you want to take care of Silver Moon? Didn't they help you guys a few days back? How in the world did your relationship devolve into such a mess? Gufei was a little confused at this point. He had seen with his two eyes how Broken Water Arrow had suddenly shown up and provided cover fire for Southern Lone Blade just when he was moments away from slaying Southern Lone Blade. Gufei thought that Silver Moon, Broken Water Arrow, and Southern Lone Blade were all acting together, yet now it seemed that that was not the case. Messy. It was just too messy. He's gonna be with Silver Moon? Didn't he say? Flame-cinched clothes began to speak when he abruptly shut himself up. Didn't he say what? Gufei asked. No one bothered to answer him. Glue hurriedly contacted the other team and filled them in about their plan to ambush Silver Moon, hitting an unexpected snag. From the start, Glue's plan was proposed on the grounds that they would meet Silver Moon to tell him that they were giving up on the assignment. They expected him to turn up all by himself as his deal with them was a complete secret. However, it was only upon seeing Southern Lone Blade's persistence that everyone could not bear to go through with it, which resulted in them changing their approach to that of an ambush by waiting for Silver Moon to serve himself up. This of course ended up mixing the two plans, and by how things stood, there was no guarantee that Silver Moon would be alone when he went to log off. If he was accompanied by the other three, there was no way that their three-man group would be capable of pulling off this ambush at all. In other words, we can only find out where Silver Moon logs off and ambush him when he next gets online, Glue said. That seems to be our only option, one of the other party's members, Patty St. Pastures, answered. So, leaving just one of us in each spawn point will do, Glue said. Yes, get Verdant Timber to guard there, you and Flame-Singed Clothes should head back to grind. We can't leave. Glue was exasperated. Why? 1,000 miles drunks here. Didn't he log off? He got back online, too. Fuck me. Just how based is that man? Patty St. Pastures commiserated with Glue and the others. Just what is going on with you guys? Gufei asked. The three men continued ignoring him. Gufei was looking a little lost now, and the three men enjoyed seeing him like this. Not gonna tell me, huh? Gufei confirmed once more. The three men beamed pleasantly at him, not opening their mouths at all. Alright. No matter how you put it, taking care of Silver Moon is a very meaningful matter, so I'm not gonna bother you guys, Gufei said as he turned to leave the safe zone. The three men were all astonished, chasing right after the man up to the entrance but not daring to take even half a step out the door. They watched Gufei wave his hand at them and disappear down the street. Just what sort of medicine is in that man's gourd too? The three men exchanged glances, relaying what had just happened to the others. Each of them was equally nonplussed. Just what sort of medicine are in their gourds? Gufei was also confused. He simply could not fathom just what sort of relationship Fleeting Smile, Silver Moon, and Southern Lone Blade's gang shared. Where are you? Gufei suddenly sent a message to Fleeting Smile while he pondered on all this. Yi Xiao was reeling. He could just not get used to Gufei's straightforward personality. Does he not realize that we are now enemies? Can't he stop speaking so casually with me in his messages? Nonetheless, as an enemy, he could not totally ignore Gufei's message, either. No one wished to deal with Gufei, which only made him feel as if the whole lot of them were all very lacking. Hero, why are you still online? It was considered as a normal practice for Gufei to go offline first, but it was practically unheard of for him to exceed his gaming time by half an hour. His old acquaintances and young masters elite could not suppress their wonder and curiosity. Meanwhile, it was the information maniac Brother Assist who rushed to pester him about the matter. Holidays, Gufei concisely replied. Oh. Everyone understood. So, what are you gonna do now? Everyone was curious about what would happen now that this person had so much time on him. If he were to level grind night after night, the 5 unyielding experts might very well see another change. Currently, the positions of the 5 unyielding experts were all very well entrenched ever since the moniker was introduced to the game. Any change would occur only after someone lost their level. There had never been a situation where a player managed to surge past the 5 players as a result of surpassing them via the experience points earned. In the end, Gufei's answer gave the 5 others a bout of dissatisfaction and made them swear in their hearts. Possessing a level of skill that made people envious, Along with his indomitable equipment, why could he not spend his time doing something more productive? What was the point of endlessly pestering and tangling himself with that bunch of scoundrels? These experts of course shared the mentality that Southern Lone Blade understood from elite gamers. Lending a hand once or twice along the way was fine, but none of them ever found value in putting so much emphasis to it daily like what Goofy's doing. Everybody was here to play the game, not Southern Lone Blade. What everyone was unsure of, however, was whether Goofy was actually here to play the game or to play with people. Having been playing Parallel World for so long, just how many in-game quests had he completed? Could he even list all the skills the different job classes had in their arsenal? Did he even understand how the damage against defense conversion calculation works? Was he even aware just how much we disdained him? These gaming experts discussed this fervently over the channel, not even bothered that Goofy could read what they were typing. Ahem. Goofy coughed, proving that he was still present. Hero, Southern Lone Blade's men are about to fall apart by all your meddling, so what do you really want to achieve? Brother Assist and the others began questioning Goofy's endgame. Would anyone care if people reported them? Goofy was also hoping for there to be a proper channel that could resolve this, as he had no wish to waste his days entangling with those people. About half of that 7-man team was at level 40. They acted all fierce in front of Goofy but was always so weak when he duked it out with them. It was not even fun parking them, and Goofy was purely picking up the tab for his own morality's sake. Who fucking cares? Brother Assist was pissed when this was mentioned. Game employees themselves got into the game, yet I've not gotten even one response after raising the matter to the relevant channels. Are you referring to Fleeting Smile? Goofy asked. Of course. That guy said he wants to deal with me, yet he hasn't done anything even now. He's not even replying to me when I message him. Goofy was critical of the man. The 5 were speechless. Just how based was this man? He's really incorrigible. Brother Assist sighed to the 4 men with him because they were in a foreign land, and adding that fact that they were in frequent bouts with the Ooze people, the other 5 members of Young Master's Elite had actually been grinding their levels together recently. All that discussion could have actually been done by them in person, but evidently, they wanted Goofy to see their discussion by their use of the mercenary channel. They truly could not stand Goofy's avant-garde and non-contemporary manner of gaming. Given his expertise and all his equipment, it'll be fine even if he's below a few levels from the average gamer, young Master Han commented. Then, what's the point of us saying so much for? Brother Assist was confused. Are you dumb? How much more efficient will our grind become if we have him tag along with us? I mean, look at that idiot. Fuck. He's lost again. Young Master Han pointed to Royal God Call. The boy was getting a little far from their group as he chased after a monster, and his inability to tell even the cardinal directions only caused him to run off even further away. Brother Assist wiped off his sweat. It felt as if all young Master Han wanted was to get Goofy over here to be their menial laborer. Sure enough, he must never think that young Master Han could be pure and kind-hearted with his thinking. Still, if we really do have Goofy here to help. Brother Assist was a little excited himself thinking about it, momentarily feeling that just Sword Demon, Royal God Call, and War Without Wounds were not enough. There was really no point in upsetting themselves comparing with one another like this. Goofy did not really depart from the archer range after leaving out the front door. He still wanted to stay around, but he felt that it was a little foolish camping out there so openly in front of Glue and the others. Secretly staking out the place would then give him a clearer view of the situation. After leaving the log-off point, Goofy hailed a player who had picked up the cooking profession on the nearest street where players were hawking goods and bought some snacks. He then ran to buy some liquor to drink at a tavern. Walking around the archer range thereafter, he chose a good spot and began eating and drinking restfully while he continued reading where he had left off in his book. All along, he was keeping an alert eye for any particular movement at the log-off point. Goofy made sure to treat himself well. Nothing happened at about 2 a.m., but he did receive a message from the person he least expected. Sir, you're still online. Goofy had a fright. Quickly checking the sender's name, he found out that it was actually one of his students. These kids that were looking forward to the winter holidays would naturally be more unrestrained than him. Gufei pulled out his friends list and glanced at the subcategory where he had placed all his students in. 20 out of the possible 24 names were lit up. Gufei wiped a handful of sweat, but before he could reply, he received another message. Sir, remove your friends list's restriction. Gufei replied with an OK and instantly received 6 system prompts. 6 players added him as a friend, and they each reported their names after. As a PE teacher, he could not recognize every student of his, so he could barely match their names to their faces. Adding these 6 players to his students subcategory, he casually looked at their information and saw that some of them had not even reached level 10. They must be thinking of using the winter holidays to delve deep into the game. Before the winter holidays would obviously be exams, so these students had not gotten online for quite some time to prepare for it. After putting the game aside for such a long time, they were all very enthusiastic at the moment. With all 20 over players each privately messaging him individually, Gufei was nearly on the brink of mental collapse. Sir, where are you? It's been so long since we've seen you. Sir, we just joined the game, come and teach us. Sir, I heard you're a super expert, come and demonstrate what you can do. Sir, I saw your moonlit nightfalls on the forums, it's so powerful. Sir. Sir, I heard you're now in Beishi City. We're about to head over. That was the final message that Gufei read and saw that it came from Alpha, that little shit who had sold him out. How do you guys know about that? There was no way that he could reply to each message sent his way, so Gufei could only choose to reply to a select few. On the forums, of course. Sir, you have such a piece of great equipment, why did you sell it off? Alpha Pride. Chapter 589, a huge problem. He could no longer be bothered to read his book further. His bottle also tipped and his food spilled onto the ground as Gufei's students demonstrated a verve that he had trouble handling. Pitting himself against these youngsters, he felt as if he were already an old man. Sir. Their questions were still flowing without end, and the lack of having a public channel for Gufei to shout over and address all his students at once made him feel as if he was about to go insane from anger. Everyone, one at a time. Gufei repeated this line 80 times, but all the students thought themselves as the one, so their questions kept coming. Besides going offline, he simply could not think of any way to escape from this harassment. He packed up all his things in a hurry and sprinted down the safe zone. Meanwhile, even though Glue and the other 2 players had seen Gufei depart, the 3 men were not in the least bit careless. Seeing how sensitive Flame-Cinched Clothes was after having experienced misfortune twice under explicable circumstances, all of them opted to stay in the safety of the spawn point and continued to play landlord. In the end, they all got quite the fright when they witnessed Gufei dashing to the safe zone like a madman, but before anyone could even utter a word, they watched as that man merely nodded his head to acknowledge the 3 of them and logged off immediately. The 3 men's eyes sparkled. Just what sort of even greater expert could there be that could hunt 1,000 miles drunk down until he was in such a state? They could hardly wait to find out. Dropping their cards, these men dashed right to the entrance, but all of them saw that it was deserted outside, save for a few random passers-by that did not exude even a bit of an expert's air. The 3 were stunned for quite a time before turning to stare at where Gufei had vanished, utterly confused again. Gufei did not log off for good, though. Merely faking going offline, he logged back on soon after. This time, however, he appeared offline. The good thing about going online without appearing to be online was that his name would not light up, and the system would not announce to everyone on his friends list that he had logged on, letting him slowly contact his students by his volition. Thinking about how he and his students would equally have plenty of time for the coming month, Gufei had no choice but to engage in this cold war. Glue and the others were really confused when they saw Gufei log on anew with a flash of white light 5 minutes later. The 3 were dumbfounded even as Gufei smiled at these men and began sending his messages. He probably had an urgent call from nature. Flame-Singled Clothes suggested. Oh, yeah, probably. Having rushed to get offline for 5 minutes like that, there really was nothing else they could think of that could cause such a reaction. Gufei originally did not wish to message Alpha as that twerp, who had previously betrayed him, was not worthy of trust. But a quick sweep of the IGNs made Gufei realize he was having difficulties matching their names to their faces, so he had no choice but to contact Alpha after standing there in a daze for quite some time. Don't tell the others that I'm actually online, otherwise, you can forget about clearing your physical education grade next semester. Gufei first threatened, for there was no way he would feel assured without intimidating that kid. Apparently, Alpha did not realize that his teacher was a principled person, for the boy nearly pissed himself in extreme fright, hastily expressing himself. "Sir, it's not my fault. Your name just flashed, and everyone saw it. I've been on for quite some time, why did you guys come looking for me only at 2 a.m.? He found this to be very strange. There was no way that his students had just gotten online at 2 a.m. "Oh, we have a few classmates that came to play today as well, and all of us want to carry them. Everyone's gotten tired after playing the whole night, so we thought to ask you, sir, and play for a while," Alpha explained. Gufei was very embarrassed. He realized that he had really come down with a bout of protagonist syndrome, believing that his students would immediately seek to contact him when they got online. However, the fact was that he and his students would always have an age and professional difference, a generational gap that the MMO game might dilute, which could not be eliminated completely in this sort of fully simulated environment. Adding the fact that both parties in this scenario knew each other in real life, the result meant that the dynamics they had were imported entirely right into the game. Evidently, none of these kids would really treat him like one of their bosom friends, and today's incident was a great example of that. When the whole lot of them was done playing for the day and was feeling tired, they suddenly saw someone appear in their friends list and were then reminded that their teacher Gufei was in this game as well. Most of the comments the students made to him were requests for coin, equipment, or to be carried while questing. Some even wanted him to perform for them. In summary, they were all just seeking him for fun. This bunch of brats. Gufei did not know if he should be laughing or crying. "Sir, are you in Beishi City? How do we get there?" Alpha again sent this question. Having made sense of all that, Gufei more or less knew that, while these students were voicing their desire to visit Beishi City, they were not solely intending to do so because he was there. Gufei was just a PE teacher, so their relationship with him was nothing so dear at all. Thus, he replied, "What are you guys coming over to Beishi City for?" Gufei already decided that if that brat replied with "to see you," he would ensure to give him a great time next semester. Sure enough, that youngster did not have anything so complex, as Alpha came clean. "We've been playing in Yunjuan City for so long, and we're thinking of changing to a different city. We heard that the various cities in game are all different." "Sure enough, that's sir, where are you? We'll tag along as well." Was no more than a convenient excuse. Gufei was not at all their reason for coming over. "Well, if you're talking about Beishi City, you'll first have to pass through the Oolong mountain range of Yunjuan City, then go through Yeguang village of Yui City, and walk down the main road all the way to get here," Gufei offered. "Are there any dangers along the way? Some of us aren't even level 10 yet." Alpha was worried. "Anyone under level 10 will be very safe, but anything past that." His voice trailed off. Alpha was surprised. "Why is that?" "My city is filled with hooligans, and the streets are teeming with murderers. Any stranger they meet will be stripped of their equipment, have their pockets emptied, and their levels be bottomed out. Players under level 10 are protected by the system, so they are very safe." "Are you being serious?" Alpha was vacillating. "Pretty much. At least, that's what they were like when I was over there." Gufei was being very hypocritical. He was someone who would leave a trail of bodies wherever he went. It was amazing how he likened himself to these obedient kids as if they were one and the same. "What now? Is there anywhere else we can go?" Alpha was afraid. He was still the highest level player among his fellow classmates, so he would surely be at the forefront if they stumbled onto anything dangerous. Alpha was a mage, yet he still had to shout out, "I'm the main tank," every time, all the while doing so in tears. Hearing that the place they were about to go would actually be so murderous, and with how the lot behind him would readily send him to die, Alpha felt as if he would really end up like what Gufei had said, losing all his equipment, money, and level. "There's no need to be afraid. You guys go ahead, and teacher here will make the arrangements for you all," Gufei replied. How would you do that? Alpha asked. You guys will make a large banner and ensure that the signet is drawn clearly on it. Pull out that banner the moment you get out of Yulong Mountain Range, and I'll inform my friends about your arrival to have them secretly take care of you all. That should ensure your safety, Gufei said. Bearing a banner. That's really ugly, sir. The youth always placed value on their image, be they male or female. It's at least better than taking off all your equipment and running about in the nude. Gufei exclaimed. Alpha was speechless for a good moment, probably discussing the matter with the other students. This discussion very apparently exposed his online status as he immediately received several questions from them. Sir, is Y City that frightening a place? Of course, you absolutely need to be on your guard, Gufei warned. Then, is there no other way to get there? Another asked. Nope. What Gufei had said could be considered as the truth. The world map for Parallel World only showed Y as the only city linked to Yanjuan City. Okay. After a period of silence, it was apparent that the students were discussing this matter on their end once more. Soon, Gufei got their reply. Alright. So, what should we write on our banner? Do we write your IGN? Most definitely not. Gufei hurried to say. Teachers' friends have enemies as well. Writing my name out would be a bad thing. Just randomly writing something easily recognizable will do. We shall write the number 3, then. After all, we are class 3. Alpha said. That works. Inform me once you guys get on the road, Gufei said. Got it. These students began to get busy on their end, leaving Gufei sniggering on his side. Just thinking about a bunch of players flying a banner. Even Gufei found such an act to be really foolish. Seeing as how those twerps keep looking to get their enjoyment off me, it should be fine to tease them a little. He had no qualms in doing such sort of harmless pranks on others. However, his series of expressions as he thought of all these really frightened anyone looking. Glue and the others had been staring at Gufei this whole time since he came back online, and when they saw him not moving after getting back beyond showing that vacant stare, they quickly realized that he was messaging others. Still, when his expression oscillated from embarrassment and malevolence to delight which seemed to be born of treachery, they felt that it was too suspicious. Before the three men even finished analyzing what they had witnessed, Gufei's eyes suddenly drifted over to them, and because the conversation had just ended, even that treacherous smile of his was flashed at those men. Oh, no, that guy seems to have set up some sort of trap for us. The three could not help but think of this. Flame singled close, who could no longer bear it, asked aloud, what are you thinking of doing? Glue and Verdant Timber gave him the side eye. Flame singled close sounded very threatening when he said that cliché line, especially with how he had intoned it with so much gusto. Gufei was not even jolted by it, however, and only showed his astonishment at the question. What? Just what tricks are you up to this time? Flame singled close demanded. You could tell? Gufei asked. I knew it. The three men each sucked in cold air. You guys had better be careful. I've already gathered reinforcement to come and take you guys out. You'll lose all your equipment, coins, and levels. Tragic. How very tragic, Gufei said even as he made to leave the archer range. The faces of Glue and the two men paled as they rushed to inform the others of this development. We're in deep trouble. 1,000 Miles Drunk has actually gathered helpers to come take care of us. Helpers? Don't blame me for praising the man. But can any of us honestly say that he needs helpers against us? Patty Scent Pastures asked. Which is why it's so frightening. If he calls for reinforcements, can you imagine just how cruel the next bit can get? Glue asked. How did you guys learn of this? Southern Lone Blade asked. He just said so himself. Glue answered. How can you believe him just because he said it? Seriously, you guys. Patty Scent Pastures felt as if they had been overreacting over nothing. It did not sound as if he were lying. 1,000 Miles Drunk stood there for quite some time sending out messages, so it's very likely that he's truly calling for more manpower, Glue said. Chapter 590, See You, Uncle. 1,000 Miles Drunk called for reinforcement. Southern Lone Blade felt that this was a very serious problem. Having done a detailed research and an in-depth investigation of Gufei, they were aware that, besides him being extremely powerful, He actually had quite the past. Just that mercenary group he ran around with had hard-to-handle veteran experts. There were indomitable players like Svelte Dancer and Eternal Dominion, but all of them were just a handful of heroes at the end of the day. They might be incapable of being everywhere at once, but the truly frightening aspect of Thousand Miles Drunk's past was his connection to Y-City's Ten Guild Alliance. The Ten Guild Alliance was a song of the common folks overthrowing and asserting control over a city, an organization that came into existence as a result of specific conditions. Other cities were only capable of forming such a huge organization in structure, but they would never be able to replicate that level of cohesion they had. The Ten Guild Alliance was really a single entity that had been split into 10 different guilds due to the system's restriction. Meanwhile, Thousand Miles Drunk was rumored to have been the pillar of strength and initiator back then that had caused the revolution in Y-City, forging a deep friendship with the men from the Ten Guild Alliance in the process, even going as far as to have an unshakable bond with the Alliance's boss, Dusky Cloud. If Thousand Miles Drunk had sent out a rallying cry, "It's too fearsome," Southern Lone Blade did not even dare to dwell on this further. It would be a tidal wave of support, and they only numbered a paltry 7. Be it a direct confrontation, an ambush, or guerrilla warfare, there was no way that they would survive. It really seemed that their game would really be over if such an eventuality came to be. Fuck. How did such an entity like the Ten Guild Alliance even exist? Southern Lone Blade thought hatefully the moment he realized that Silver Moon no doubt deserved the first merit for the formation of the Ten Guild Alliance. Silver Moon, has he shown himself yet? Rage was etched on Southern Lone Blade's face as he asked his comrades that were split into 2 teams about this. He had reservations about making a move against Silver Moon to begin with and was only feeling particularly buoyant when he saw how all his comrades were so enthused about going through with it. However, he could no longer restrain himself any further right now, for the moment he realized that Silver Moon was unequivocally the bane of everything, there was nothing unpalatable that he was not a part of. Not yet. By the looks of things, I reckon that he'll only appear in the morning, Patty St. Pastures answered. What are we gonna do about the things on Thousand Miles Drunk's side? Big South, he may very well call on the Ten Guild Alliance's aid if that's what he is doing. Glue obviously had a good grasp of Goofy's past as well. Let's confirm the validity of this before discussing further. Blackwater, go check things out over by Y-City. I'm sure it will be easy to find out if any large-scale movements occur, Southern Lone Blade said. Alright. Blackwater, who was currently doing his best to salvage his level as best as he could, immediately headed to Y-City once he got his orders. Meanwhile, everyone else will go back and busy yourself with your affairs for the time being, Southern Lone Blade said. Their emotions and thoughts were all over the place even as they carried their own activities. Glue and the 2 others were no longer in the mood for card games. Sitting around in a circle together, they discussed worryingly over their unpredictable future. Dash 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 dash. At the moment, Goofy was wondering if he should really hail the de facto tyrant of Y-City, Dusky Cloud. Even though he had greatly exaggerated when describing the perils in Y-City, it was really an unruly region. Those children were immature and enjoyed indulging in their reckless impulses. There really was no telling that they might run into trouble of their creation. Thinking about this for quite some time, he felt that it was best if he bore some responsibility to his students and pulled up his friends list to contact Dusky Cloud. You there, Boss Dusky? Goofy greeted Dusky Cloud like a normal player. Dusky Cloud and Goofy had added each other as friends back when the latter was passing by Y-City while helping traversing 4 seas with their guild quest, yet neither had contacted each other ever since. It was in the wee hours of the day when Goofy messaged Dusky Cloud from out of the blue. The man was in the midst of leading his buddies in bullying another guild, so when he saw it was actually Thousand Miles Drunk that contacted him after clearing his head a little, Dusky Cloud instantly perked up and stopped his task at hand and concentrated on replying to the message. Thousand Miles Drunk's name had become all the more prominent nowadays. After the sword-selling incident that had happened in Beishi City propagated the forums, even though the players had no means to take a screenshot of what they saw there were some who still managed to quote the stats of his Moonlit Nightfalls word for word. Plenty of players nearly pissed themselves when they saw just how fearsome the weapon was. But what made it all the more formidable was how this sword's owner had sold it so readily. There were usually only two situations when such a piece of wondrous equipment would be sold in MMOs. One was that the owner was about to leave the game for good, and the second was that the owner had come into possession of another far mightier weapon and this sword was no longer of use. Just thinking about the second possibility had already pushed many to the point of soiling themselves. Miles bro, what's up? Dusky Cloud immediately stopped what he was doing and focused on replying to Goofy, ready to ask about that sword's whereabouts casually. According to the forums, it was sold to Svelte Dancer. But Dusky Cloud knew that the two were fairly well acquainted with each other, and that just made the situation a little strange. It's like this. I have a class of students making their way from Yunju City to Beishi City. Don't bully them when they pass by Y City. Goofy said. A class of students. Dusky Cloud looked at the phrase used and found it to be even more bizarre than Moonlit Nightfalls. When you see a group passing through with a banner bearing the number 3, that's them. Goofy continued. Okay. Dusky Cloud answered, still unsure of what this was all about. Thanks a lot. Goofy was already finished. Oh, hey. Dusky Cloud quickly interrupted. I've been looking through the forums these past few days, and bro, that sword of yours is incredible. Dusky Cloud quickly pried. Haha. So, you sold it to Svelte Dancer? Dusky Cloud asked. Nah, it's all a joke. I still have it on me, Goofy replied. Oh, then if you really do feel like selling it, I'll grab it off you no matter the cost. Dusky Cloud could also be considered as fairly rich, though that was not through a solo effort but more of a collective effort. The members of his alliance were all about honor and unity, the thousands of players were all close to one another like family, so if everyone chipped in a gold coin or two, anyone could easily acquire anything they urgently require. Sure. Goofy did not really mind about such things. Thanks a lot. Also, just what is it about that class of students you have? Dusky Cloud still had no idea what the whole matter was about. They're my students, of course. There should be about 20 to 30 of them, and they will be coming through Y City soon. I've personally experienced just how powerful you guys are over there, and I'm afraid that the kids will be bullied because of their immaturity, so I really hope Boss Dusky will take care of them on my behalf, Goofy explained. Ah. So that's how it is. I understand. Dusky Cloud actually still had no idea what he meant by calling some players students, but he was a little embarrassed to ask more questions, so he replied accordingly, why don't Miles bro pass an IGN for me to add to my friends list, so it'll be easier on my part to contact them. That works, too. Sorry about the trouble. Goofy immediately told him off as IGN before sending a message right to the boy. Soon, a player called Dusky Cloud will be adding you as a friend. He's someone I got from Y City to take care of you guys until all of you safely make your way out of their territory. Got it. Alpha immediately replied. With everything in order, Goofy could not hold back his grimace and chuckled wryly. Just what sort of situation is this? Over in Y City, while there was not much to be said about Dusky Cloud, at the very least, he was someone who was a man of his word. Having agreed to help Goofy over this matter, the man immediately added Alpha as a friend. Dusky Cloud asked Alpha where their group was, but since this was the first time Alpha had taken this route, his description of the area was vague at best. He tried to use coordinates, but Dusky Cloud had only passed through that road once, so how could he be familiar with what that meant? Comparing the numerical difference between his coordinates and the one given to him did not work, either, for he had no idea if that was too far or too near. Nevertheless, Dusky Cloud did not dare to dawdle and called several brothers in arms to head toward the road connecting Yunju City to Y City, ready to receive the aforementioned group of students. Dusky Cloud calculated that the distance between their coordinates should not be too far off, but that was only the horizontal distance between the 2 points. Going through the mountain pass itself was another thing altogether. Besides, Alpha and the others had only left Yunjuan City not too long ago, so Dusky Cloud ended up waiting for a whole 3 hours. Plenty of his comrades had gotten so bored that they lay down on the ground for a nap until, finally, Dusky Cloud saw a troop of players entered his field of vision, and the player at the forefront of this troop had a banner flying high. They are finally here. Dusky Cloud got excited. Sending a swift kick to those unsightly men of his lying on the ground, he reminded everyone to perk themselves up so as not to let the approaching group have a poor impression of them. By the time the other party drew near, Dusky Cloud's eyes had already widened like saucers. Carefully glancing at each of these players before his eyes, he finally could not hold himself back and swore, "Motherfucker! They're really students." Even though Gu Fei used the term student, Dusky Cloud merely thought that was a special label he had reserved for his comrades or underlings, just like how he and his comrades would call one another motherfuckers. Having a good look at these players coming right up to them, Dusky Cloud realized that what Thousand Miles Drunk called students were actual students. After secretly throwing a few appraisals their way, Dusky Cloud could really feel his eyeballs fall out of their sockets since it became apparent that the highest level player among the group was the one holding that banner aloft and taking the lead at level 36. The rest were around 20s and 30s. Even more shocking was how there were even players who had not even reached level 10. In order to demonstrate his illustrious background, Dusky Cloud brought all his best experts for this meeting, and the moment they realized that they were here to receive and deal with a random bunch of kids, each of them all threw looks of disdain toward Dusky Cloud. That troop of students noticed these men in front of them at this point, each of them looking fierce and murderous. All these students got a series of question marks when they tried using appraisal on these men, so they could not help but began speculating in their hearts. Alpha was about to contact Dusky Cloud on his own when he saw a thief walk right out from that formation of men, asking with a difficult expression, "Whose fatal reckoning?" All these students' eyes went toward Alpha, the act itself an indication that there was no longer any need for them to answer the question directly. "I am Dusky Cloud." Dusky Cloud bore with a curious scrutiny of this bunch of kids at his introduction of himself. "Oh, so it's you." "You gave me quite the scare." Alpha gave a sigh of relief. He was terrified when this person asked who Fatal Reckoning was and did not even dare answer in response. Meanwhile, these classmates of his did not fail to disappoint him and swiftly betrayed him at the drop of a hat. Miles told me to take care of you all." Dusky Cloud was really bad with his words. All he did in this game was slay others and chase skirts. He had never once been asked to take care of kids. Thousand Miles Drunk, that motherfucker. To think he'd actually give yours truly such a task. Dusky Cloud was complaining deep in his heart. "Thank you so much." "We're on our way to Beishi City," Alpha said. "Yes, this way." "Keep your banner." Dusky Cloud took the lead, grumpily barking this out when he turned around to find Alpha still valiantly holding up that banner with the number 3 on it. These students followed behind Dusky Cloud, chattering freely as they pointed out the difference between the view they saw in Y City and in Yeonju-on City. Dusky Cloud's men accompanied this troop, each of them showing an astounded expression. They had all seen children in the game before, but they had never once seen such a large bunch of them together. "Now what do we do? Do we have to go forward and chat with them? What will we talk about? What are the kids playing nowadays? Do they still like Transformers? Do they watch Black Cat Detective 1? Do they know the Big Blue Mouse and the Big-Faced Cat too?" Dusky Cloud and his comrades were only good at being violent and lacking when it came to connecting to people with their words. Besides, there was a clear generation gap between them and these kids, so the whole lot of them walked along not knowing what to do with themselves, feeling as if the road itself seemed unendingly long. They soon arrived at Yagwang village, and there were no more grinding areas after getting past it, so there should not be any more other players here aside from those heading to Beishi City. Dusky Cloud came to a halt and turned around, addressing Alpha, "Just follow along the main road after getting through this village, and it should be a straight path to Beishi City. There are no grinding zones beyond here, so there should not be any sort of danger." "Oh, thanks. We'll be on our way, then," Alpha quickly said. "All right. Take it easy and take care." Dusky Cloud had no idea what he was saying at this point. These students began leaving even as they waved to these men whom they believed in their hearts to be good-hearted people. "See you, Uncle." Some of the more warm-hearted students even shouted this to Dusky Cloud. "Uncle?" Dusky Cloud was in shock. "Is yours truly really that old?" "That guy, his damn mustache is even longer than mine, yet he dared to call me an uncle?" Dusky Cloud really felt like crying at this moment, turning back to see his comrades already rolling on the floor laughing. "Your students have left Y City," Dusky Cloud was very proper when he did things, so he did not forget to keep Goofy informed as to the status of this task he had asked of him. "Thanks a lot, Boss Dusky," Goofy said. "You're a teacher?" Dusky Cloud asked. "Yup. Do teachers bring their students to play MMOs now?" Dusky Cloud was perplexed. Has society advanced to such a point already? "I guess I'm really a little old." "Old Cloud, there's someone there." Someone suddenly sent a message to Dusky Cloud, even as the man secretly pointed over in a certain direction. The rest had already received this same message and were all winking at one another surreptitiously, acting as if nothing was going on even as they pretended to make their way unintentionally over in that direction. However, the stealthed thief was apparently far more vigilant than they had imagined. Already realizing what they were doing, the guy suddenly dismissed that skill in favor of Fleetfoot as he made his escape. "Coward, don't you dare run away!" Dusky Cloud hollered as he gave chase, but it was already too late. The archers beside him fired several arrows of theirs, but not one hindered the thief. Very quickly, that unknown player was far away in the blink of an eye. "That's the 10 Guild Alliance for you, alright. They have plenty of talented men and even with some that can counter stealth. I was too careless." Naturally, that thief Dusky Cloud and his men had discovered was Blackwater, and given how much quicker his movement speed was compared to Afa and the others, he had managed to reach Y City region before that group of students even made it to the city. The man had been lying in wait over at Yagwang village, looking to find out if there would be reinforcements coming their way since it was a landmark players had to pass by when making their way to Beishi City. At the moment, Blackwater was sending a message over to Southern Lone Blade and the others. Big South, Dusky Cloud just sent a troop of players over to Beishi City, a total of 26 players. They're not too old in terms of age, and their equipment is terrible. I can't make sense of their intentions at all. Dusky Cloud himself brought about 20 or so experts with him. I wanted to keep watch their movement, but I got discovered. They have means to counter stealth, Blackwater reported.